You're listening to EWBSX, the Cyberbully. The pendulum is swinging.
You may even get tired of winning, and you'll say, please, please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore. Mr. President, it's too much. And I'll say, no, it isn't. We have to keep winning. We have to win more. We're going to win more.
You know, I think I like Cheeky's explanation here the best. He said, Matt can only resist West Coast supremacy for so long. That's what it is. It's the West Coast in me, constantly pulling me back to the West Coast optimal time zones. Oh, yeah, it was the good news is I've got tomorrow's show basically prepared because I tried to get it all into one and I was like, no. So there's a couple of rather timely subjects that I had to push off into tomorrow because I wanted to make sure I got a couple of things and then do the thing tomorrow. So this will be, if you want my reaction to the whole like Indiana redistricting or the Indiana Republican primary results and the effects on redistricting, and then the Casey Putsch campaign, all that sort of stuff, the commentary around that, what it means for optimal strategy in the political realm. We're gonna save that for tomorrow. That's gonna be in tomorrow's show, unless something dramatic happens between now and then, and I have to tease you guys and push it off a little further. But today, I wanted to get a couple of these things done and over with today. One of them is I want to address the thing about mass deportations, which that'll end up being probably the last thing I talk about here. I mean, I know it's going to be the last thing we'll talk about here today because it's the last in the group of tabs. But that'll be a good setup for tomorrow. Talking about, we got an interview from Tom Homan where he's talking about mass deportations, and he has some good quotes in there. And then there was I did some math. I was doing some math over the weekend with Grok, and a really big issue here. Mongobloid.
Have you tried setting up a talk with Conrad from WW1? It might be a fruitful exchange to broaden his horizon.
You know, I've met Conrad once. I think once, maybe twice. I actually met him at a Jay Dyer event a couple of years ago. Yeah, I'd be interested in talking to him. I'm like, right now I'm just doing the lay, but I've got a whole long list of. I want to add an interview component to it. I want to be able to bring guests on and talk to them. But I've got to figure out how to make it work, how to set it up, and I just haven't had the time to sit down and put that together. I'm gonna have to do a separate thing of scenes and everything. I have to think about the structure of the show and all that. So a nice thing about OBS is you can do a lot with it, but you have to manually do a lot with it. I don't want to just do like a separate stream and go through StreamYard or something like that because that's going to mess up my back end. So So yeah, I've got a whole long list of people that I want to have conversations with, and I guess I'm kind of trying to decide: do I want to make it a component to the lab, or just do it as a totally separate thing altogether? That'll have scheduling implications, and then do I do it as a live show, or do I just do it as a recording? Do I just record conversations with people and then release them, and you guys can listen to them afterwards? These are all the things I've been considering. But so Conrad's definitely someone I would be interested in talking to. If he invited me to come talk to him, I'd be happy to. Dr. Doom Guy! Thank you, sir, for the $47 tip. As you can see, we were pre-fluffed today. We had a $10 tip came through Venmo from Jonathan, and a $5 tip through Cash App from Paul. So thank you to you guys. Yesterday, those gentlemen sent them over yesterday. And so I added those in. King Pilled for both of those if you want to tip your streamer that way, or you can use tips.kingpilled.com. Thank you guys for doing that. Thank you, Pale Morning Dude, for the kicks earlier during the pre-show. The very ADHD pre-show. Cyberbully was all over the place this morning. We got fluffed. The tip goal got fluffed ahead of time. You guys started $15 complete through the game. Mr. Seuss says keep the marketing all in one place. It's the Astrolabe. Interviews are there too, better for marketing and presence. That's kind of what I've been leaning toward, but that's the most like infrastructure heavy way of doing it. So we'll have to see. Agitprop Master's in the chat. He showed up because he knows that I'm about to play one of his clips. He says, first interview, me. Well, you are on the list, so that might as well be a thing that we do. That gives you a little deadline to get this done, because the man has thoughts he wants to share with the people. Astrolabe doing call-ins and interviews. It would probably be good for yeah, it would probably be good for views. That's a heavy lift on the back end here, but that's what she said. What was I saying? I was saying something. Deportations, and there was that, and there was something else I was in the middle of, but then the money coming in distracted me. I don't remember what it was. Well, I'm fine with that. So we'll get started, and I'm sure it'll come back to me at some point here. But let's get started here with a clip from the Agitprop Master. Return of the King. Highway. Insane how good those movies were. But we gotta stay down. I don't wanna end up in a room all alone. Don't wanna end up someone that I don't even know. Never hide away the day good fortune comes our way, and we ride down the King's Highway. the group chat logging on in the morning. Making our way into X where all the panicans are. We need more DHS funding so we can build some of those of our own. What a pseudo-wave. Beautiful work, sir. Make sure you guys show up on Saturday for the pseudo-wave. It's going to be a good one. I remember what I was saying before. I had all the tomorrow's show basically put together. The intent is that tomorrow's show will be earlier. I got up at 4:00 this morning and to get the show ready, and I knew I had a whole crap load of stuff to get through. I went to go clean up. I left a Dr. Pepper in the freezer last night, and the Dr. Pepper exploded. And Amy pointed it out to me yesterday, and she was like, "Don't worry, I'll clean it up." And I was like, "No, I'll clean it." But it turns out that meant. Well, I mean, I knew what it was gonna entail, but it was as big of a task as I expected. Completely unpacking the freezer and cleaning off all of the frozen little bits of Dr. Pepper that were all over literally everything, and wiping down the inside, pulling all the shelves out and everything, and I was doing it and trying to be really quiet because I was doing it at 4:00 in the morning. So yeah, I finished that up and then sat down to put the show together, and I was like, damn, there is so much stuff here. And I actually got waylaid briefly because I went over to Grok and I asked Grok, I was like, how difficult would it be to make just like a little web app or a little tool or something like that where I could tell it to take all of the open tabs that I have right now and use AI to sort them by subject, by like what the content of them is, and organize them by subject, and then open each subject in its own window. And Grok was like, oh yeah, it'd be pretty straightforward, pretty easy to do. So I'm going to add that to the to-do list because I sit here and I had probably, when I went through and I had the stuff that I had pre-prepared that I've been backed up wanting to talk about, and then added in all the new stuff, I had like 60 tabs open or something like that. And so I have to go through them and have to decide, okay, I want to keep this, I don't want to keep this. And then I pare them down to the ones that I want to keep. And then I go back through and I organize them by category. Actually, no, I go and I pull out the ones that I want to do for a future show and push those off separately. So I have them retained. It takes a while. It takes a while to wade through all of these, but we got some good stuff. So I ended up getting at least 2 shows worth out of all of it. So we got today and tomorrow and maybe Friday as well. But a couple of quick hitters here at the top. Rudy Giuliani was reportedly very, very close to passing on a couple of days ago. This absolute patriot, one of the most underappreciated patriots that the country has seen. A great, great American. A guy that absolutely deserves his own bust and like a library named after him or something. And I think in retrospect, people are going to look back on him with a lot more fondness. But we talked several weeks ago about he got in this accident, and it seemed very much like it was an attempted assassin. It was like an assassination attempt because he got flagged down by like some lady who was like said she was running from her abusive husband or something like that, and then immediately after he like stopped, he pulled over his little motorcade or whatever and stopped, and and tried to help her out. And then when he left, shortly after he left, he got in a really severe car accident. And so seeing there was some other element to the story as well that I'm not remembering now, but so they've had it out for him. Apparently he had really bad pneumonia. And so Fox News reported that a priest gave him his last rites before he rallied and the doctors removed the ventilator. So say a prayer for America's mayor. What an absolute patriot, an American warrior, a great, great loyal servant of his emperor. Speaking of, I don't know how I missed this story. Way back when it happened. In 2017, Trump allowed other White House dinner guests to order what they wanted, but forced Chris Christie to order meatloaf. He forced him to order the meatloaf. Let me refresh the chat here. It's glitching out. Mythomagus said, let's see, I'll have an order of chicken, an order of steak, a hamburger, a pasta on the side. You are having meatloaf. So I went and found I was looking for details on it, like a little more, and it was originally from the Boston Globe, and you had to create an account and pay them $1 to read the article, and I'm like, I'm not giving you a fucking dollar. What are you talking about? So I went looking for something else, and I found this. Last week in the White House, Donald Trump forced Chris Christie to eat meatloaf, even though Christie did not necessarily want the meatloaf. There was a time when Christie was a man with autonomy and pride. There was a time when Trump was kind, and his voice was soft, and his words were inviting, and life was a Springsteen song, and the song was exciting. There was a time, and then it all went wrong. Trump rewarded loyalty, they said, and he was loyal. He gave Trump his boughs and his branches and his leaves and the better part of his trunk. He brought him the severed head of Marco Rubio. He let Donald Trump sit on his worn-out stump. Christie had hopes. He was going to be vice president. And then he was going to have a job in the White House. And then he was going to head the transition. There's the menu, Trump told the room when Christie visited. You guys order whatever you want. Chris, you and I are going to have the meatloaf. I'm telling you, the meatloaf is fabulous, Trump said. Christie did not necessarily want the meatloaf, but it was all right enough once he ate it. Meatloaf always tastes a little like humiliation anyway, even if the breadcrumbs are perfectly fresh. For dessert, Trump made him eat an entire chocolate cake, but he couldn't finish it, and the class laughed at him, and the Trump Bowl won. Or maybe that was something that happened in Matilda. Christie does not remember. Sometimes it seems like this is not his life at all, just the part of the book where the orphan is made to suffer to build character. Christie has a lot of character now. Maybe it would have helped if he had had some of it earlier. He's not the only one. Mike Pence was sent out in the snow to say hello to a statue. Sean Spicer had to get himself a different suit. He is aware of these things, and sometimes when he passes them in the hallway, they quickly avert their gazes from one another in a kind of solidarity. But it is all right, perfectly all right. Christie did not mind eating the meatloaf. The meatloaf was good, he said. Christie once dreamed of being president of the United States, but that was a long time ago. That is one of the best pieces of writing I have ever seen come out of, this is Washington Post. Yeah, originally from the Washington Post. I was reading it here from Chicago Tribune. That was extraordinary. See, this is what the libs could have been doing all of this time. Alexandra Petrie, I kind of recognize that that name. Does that ring a bell for anyone? Alexandra Petrie, American humorist. Okay, so yeah, she's a humorist and writer. Youngest person to have a column in the Washington Post, joined The Atlantic in May of 2025. That was legitimately good writing. That was funny. That was fucking hilarious. That's my president. That is my president right there. Mike Pence was sent down to the snow to say hello to a statue. Just imagining Trump being like, hey, Mike, go say hello to the statue. It's a beautiful statue, Mike. Don't you love it? Go get your picture taken with the statue, Mike. And then this one here, I actually had the whole show ready, and then my trackpad battery died, and I was like, I don't have an extra port to plug it in, and so because I have to have the iPad plugged in, and so I had to sit here and plug it into the frickin' wall and sit here. And it was given to me as a gift. Very nice. I didn't have to buy one, and it's fantastic. It's wonderful not having the cords around it, but when it dies every month or so, it is a pain in the ass. So I was sitting down there and downstairs just scrolling through my phone, and this clip came up, and I just marvel, absolutely marvel at the glory that is living in Donald Trump's America.
We're also honored to be joined by a military mother who sacrificed far more than most. That's Melody Wolf. And, I love the name Melody because for a long time, they have spell correct and word correct on these crazy machines that we use to put out truths, or they used to be called tweets. And
crazy machines.
Every time I wrote Melania, it would correct to Melody. So I do things, and I work very fast. And I talk about it, and I say, and Melania is fantastic, and happy Mother's Day, Melania, our great First Lady.
I gotta get that again.
To Melody. So I do things, and I work very fast. And I talk about it, and I say, and Melania is fantastic, and happy Mother's Day, Melania, our great First Lady, Melania. But it would spell correct and word correct to Melody. And sometimes I wouldn't proofread it, and I'd say, and I would get just absolute decimated. These people would decimate. They said he didn't know the name of his wife. He keeps calling her. And I said, what the hell is wrong with this machine? I didn't know about that little feature, but I got that corrected eventually. You know who corrected? The military. I said, come here, you got to correct this. You're killing me. I took more abuse. She's been called Melody a lot. Anyway.
Oh, my God.
I had to explain it to you this way. I stood up here to explain it to you. I apologize.
That is immediately like top 5 all time of one of his rants like that. Legitimately fucking hilarious. I played the one yesterday where I was like, would this be funny if it wasn't Trump? Like, how much of this is like the specter of him being him and being the president, and not just being some sort of like ordinary run-of-the-mill president, but being a generational president, but then also being this hilarious, totally self-aware, self-deprecating boomer comedian. Like, it's like you have to have the whole picture together to really truly appreciate how funny it is. But that monologue right there, just off the top, when he starts doing his observational stuff, describing interactions with people, it is the funniest shit I have ever seen. We are so, so blessed to have this man in our lives. Look at him yesterday with the kids. He had the presidential fitness test that he's bringing back. Look at him out here just hanging out with the kids. The kids wanted him to do the dance. Think about this opportunity. I'm so, so jealous of these kids. Imagine getting the opportunity to do the dance with the president. America's grandpa. Watch that little interaction with that kid there. This one here, he's sort of following him, and he calls him. He was standing next to him. He's following behind him, and Trump's walking away from him, and he calls him right here. It looks like he probably says, Mr. President, right here. And Trump, takes a second to react to him, and he was getting ready to just turn away from him. But then Trump actually reacted just kind of late. Watch it. Mr. President. And he's like, all right, he's gone. But he still hears him. He still turns around and comes back to him. Just these... We had the B just the other day. Now we have this. This is the President of the United States. This is the sort of thing that if there was a president like this in the 1950s or something, I mean, it wouldn't even be possible to have a president like this, but a president that was this combination of photogenic and accessible and just maximally oozes confidence everywhere he goes, just down here hanging out with the kids, dancing with the kids, dancing to the gay song with the kids, like, people would still be writing hagiographies about him today. Look at the absolute keynote of this picture. Just like put that in marble. Yeah, that'd be a 5-term president, no kidding. Bad Hombre said, 2 years ago, we had transgender TikTokers flashing, shaking, and caressing their breast implants on the White House lawn under the latest iteration of the Progress Pride flag, while Hunter Biden did lines of coke in the distance. This is now. This is at the White House. Kids just running around, playing, meeting each other, doing athletic challenges.
If he speaks from a handheld microphone.
Tooz McGee said this has a specific flavor of nostalgia. It's not quite that coziness of the 90s, but not far off. Yeah, I was just thinking about that. I was like, I can't really think of an era that I would compare it to, because it's different. It's its own thing. It's like a new era of American whimsy. And just 2 years ago, it was trannies. Never doom. Never let anyone convince you that we aren't winning. Look at this. The DOJ Civil Rights Division is offering attorney signing bonuses up to $25,000 and looking to hire attorneys outside Washington, D.C., with a preference for attorneys who can work out of the satellite offices in New York City, San Francisco, Dallas, and Raleigh. The USA Jobs link is here, paying at the GS15, GS11 to GS15 range. From looking at the conversation, it seems like the salaries aren't tremendous, but if you could make it work, if you've got the requisite legal experience and you could make this work, remember that the DOJ Civil Rights Division is now prosecuting people for discriminating against white people. They're prosecuting people for discriminating against Americans. You could go contribute to that yourself. Go serve your country, Anon. Chad Mizell said, smart move to get attorneys out of D.C. Even smarter move, jumping on this opportunity ASAP. So true. Where are our lawyer bros? Do you want to go waste away in some private practice somewhere where you could barely sleep at night? Sure, you might make more money. Or you could go serve your country. Serve your country in the DOJ Civil Rights Division, protecting the rights of your fellow citizens. Now, this is one of the subjects I really wanted to touch on. It's why I'm going to have to push the electoral stuff to tomorrow. Craig Fuller from Freight Alley. This guy, I've been following him a lot recently, and it was funny, right after I started following him, then Tom Luongo started talking about him. And that was a cool little synchronicity. He has been all over this, tracking the freight situation in the United States, the domestic freight situation, which is a tremendous proxy for economic productivity. And it is absolutely mooning right now. He says the biggest story of the year is the way the economy is being reshaped right in front of our eyes. The heartland being obliterated by globalization is making an economic comeback thanks to the AI build-out, abundant energy, and tax policies that encourage domestic sourced materials over foreign. For the past decade, the middle of the country didn't produce freight, it received it. That has flipped this year. Think about the downstream implications of this. For the past decade, as America has been comprehensively hollowed out, the middle of the country wasn't producing freight, it was just receiving it. Things were just being imported. This year, that has flipped. This is specifically the middle of the country. The middle of the country is now a net producer of freight. And he's not like a major MAGA guy necessarily. He's a total like fingers in the dirt chud. He was actually, I don't know, 6 months ago, he was like totally dooming out about the tariff situation. And I was just listening to an interview with him where he said like 5 months ago he would have given the administration an F on, from his perspective, as strictly a guy who's just autistically obsessed with the freight market. He said he would have given them an F for what they were doing. And now he is like, says he has never been more bullish in his life. So this is what he says, the Heartland's revenge, how AI is reindustrializing the American interior from a hollowed out heartland to a manufacturing renaissance. For decades, the narrative of the American economy was written in the shadow of shuttering factories. As production moved offshore, our economic engine shifted gears from physical goods to services and finance. Firms that produced almost nothing became the new American titans, fueling a consumer-driven boom that enriched the coasts while hollowing out the interior. We became a nation that designed and sold, but no longer built. If you think about like financialization and software are almost exclusively, it's started changing a little bit more recently, but for a long time, those things have been exclusively associated with the coasts. And so the wealth transfer that has happened as a consequence of the financialization and the softwareization of everything, of the entire stock market, the effect of that has been to just shift the balance of, like, even if the interior had just tracked with their current trend, the coast would have been massively, I was talking like the disparity between the heartland and the coast would have been drastically exacerbated, even if the heartland was staying steady. But the heartland it was almost a direct wealth transfer. The heartland was being hollowed out as the coasts were being amplified. Which is why increasingly now all of the electoral maps look like red across everything on the inside and then strips of blue on the outside. And that would be, those are electoral maps that are overstating the presence of the blue as well, above and beyond how the current layout is. Just consider to what extent, because of how much the Democrat Party's representation is due exclusively to fraud and rigging elections, just outright crime. Think about how much of that blue is present and realize that that's overinflated. This story was told most clearly by our freight patterns. For 20 years, goods flowed overwhelmingly from the coasts inward. Millions of containers arrived at our ports filled with products made by foreign labor, then trucked toward the center of the country to feed a consumption-heavy lifestyle. The heartland was a destination for finished goods, rarely the source. And it's particularly interesting, too, then to consider how this has affected. The heartland is more associated with obesity than the coasts as well. You have the typical like coastal urbanite that is like a vegan and takes a whole bunch of supplements and goes to her gym classes and everything. And the numbers bear this out. There's a direct correlation here. The heartland was being hollowed out of productive activity and being forced into a consumptive posture. So they were literally inflating. So he says, the heartland was a destination for finished goods, rarely the source. This year, that logic flipped. Sonar, our high-frequency data platform that captures supply chain movements, shows how the economy is changing right before our eyes. By monitoring real-time order flows to trucking firms and rail carriers, we can see economic shifts months before they appear in government reports. What we are seeing today is a reversal of the historical norm. Coastal activity remains quiet, while the middle of the country is experiencing a breakout in freight activity. The catalyst is the voracious build-out of artificial intelligence infrastructure. Contrary to the popular imagination, AI is not purely a digital phenomenon. In the physical world, it is the bedrock of a new heavy industry. Now, there's an interesting connection here in that what he's identifying here is the impact that AI is having. And the thing that he's using to identify that impact is driven by AI, so to speak. So you're seeing a way that this starts becoming this is one of the ways in which it can become a self-licking ice cream cone to a certain extent. A big factor that I think has been underappreciated, the only person I've really seen that's talked about this at any sort of length is Peter St. Onge. That one of the big things that the government is doing, people talk about like Doge disappeared or whatever, they're ignorant. They're literally just ignorant. They don't know what they're talking about. Every single agency in the government is currently being overhauled in terms of the software and the data granularity that they have access to. There's massive upgrades that are happening in all these different branches of the government that are going to enable them to actually use like real-time updating data aggregation tools. So you notice, so this guy here, he's got this data platform that presumably I don't know how exactly it works, but presumably he's got access to all of this data that he's just tracking and monitoring in real time, so he can see trends emerging in real time. Now, in theory, if he had controls over levers of policy, then he could be reacting in real time to the emergence of those trends, as opposed to the government data gathering system, which is extremely inaccurate, takes a really, really long time to bear out, and is constantly you're constantly operating on like months to years long delays, and the data you're finally getting is out of date by the time it gets to you. So just simply making the government more capable of real-time response to address various different trends it means that we're not going to be dealing with what we're trending toward is not a government that is characterized by bloat and inefficiency and incompetence. It's going to be the opposite. We're flipping that around to now we're increasingly going to have a government that is defined by agility, efficiency, and what would you say, like I don't know, the ability to monitor things and react to them on a really granular scale. This is going to have extraordinary downstream effects on the institution, and I'm not talking at a political level. I'm talking at a biological level. You know, this is where you wind up with AI Congress. You know, I'm not take AI Congress as sort of a label for a particular phenomenon. That's not to say that there's literally going to be AI agents that are elected. Like that, don't take that too like autistically literally. But as it is right now, you can think about like someone who's like a congressperson who is informed by doing Google searches. As you just kind of like tighten that feedback loop a little bit, the congressperson basically just becomes a conduit for whatever Google tells them. So then you get a congressperson who's like a conduit for whatever Grok tells them, you know, and pretty soon the efficiencies are going to get weaned out of this. The incentives are starting, the foundational incentives of the institutions are beginning to pivot. And this is why I talk about these forces that are bigger than any single person. They're bigger than a some sort of plan that like people could come together and implement. These are massive civilizational, generational forces that are moving these patterns forward. Amy says Eastwood is pretending to drink Red Bull and smoke cherry stem cigarettes in case anyone was thinking about a paternity test. The young patriot. He's chud maxing. So yeah, like think about the different regulatory agencies and stuff being able to like think about housing, the housing market. The regulatory agencies don't have more sophisticated tools than Zillow. If you especially if you pay for like the tools that a licensed real estate agent has available to them, it would blow your mind how granularly you can dig into people's personal data using publicly available stuff. If you have a license, if you have a real estate license, so I guess it's not totally publicly available, but I mean, you can. It depends on the state. Some states have different privacy regulations around this, but there are states, Texas is one of them, where you can literally go find. I could, if I had your address, then I could go find the interest rate that you paid on the first mortgage you got on the house, like the terms of the mortgage. So like you can, especially if you start applying some moderately sophisticated AI tools to aggregating and accumulating all of this stuff and filtering through it, you would like there's some tremendous things that can be discovered in all of that. But the government doesn't have anything any more sophisticated than that. And in some cases they're actually less sophisticated. So as the tech bros have gotten their fingers into the government, they're going to be injecting a whole lot of efficiency and responsiveness, which is going to be terrible for the managerial class. The catalyst is, okay, so I read that. It's not merely a digital phenomenon in the physical world, it's the bedrock of a new heavy industry. This industrial tale extends far beyond software providers to the energy, power, and construction services required to build massive data factories. The scale is staggering. During the construction, okay, listen to this. During the construction of the interstate highway system, the United States spent approximately $20 billion per year adjusted for inflation over 35 years. Today, AI data center investment is hitting $20 billion every 2 weeks. And unlike the highway system, this infrastructure is being built with private capital. Think of that comparison. The construction project of building the interstate highway system cost every year what AI data center investment is hitting every 2 weeks. These gigasites represent a new economy dependent on 3 pillars: data centers, energy supply, and the AI models that optimize them both. This is where the digital becomes physical. According to Sonar analysts, a standard 500 megawatt data center requires roughly 30,000 truckloads of concrete, structural steel, and copper. That's a 500 megawatt data center. Beyond raw materials, these facilities house an array of heavy industrial equipment, massive turbines, redundant generators, and high-voltage transmission infrastructure. As projects scale into the gigawatt range, demand grows exponentially. While 500 megawatt centers were recently the gold standard, they're no longer the ceiling. Meta's Prometheus project, that's auspicious. Meta's Prometheus project in Ohio is designed as a 1 gigawatt campus, consuming as much electricity as the entire city of San Francisco. Even larger projects are coming online, such as the Delta Gigasite in Utah, which aims for 10 gigawatts over the next decade, a footprint that will eventually require more power than the entire state of Utah consumes today. More power than the entire state of Utah consumes today. America does not currently have the capacity to power these mega projects, but the market is responding. Utilities are expanding existing plants, and a new generation of power stations is being planned, often funded directly by the hyperscalers themselves. This here was something that Trump has personally taken credit for. That he said, well, instead of dealing with trying to incorporate them into the grid, why don't we just have them build their own energy generation alongside, just roll it into the whole project, which actually then makes them, you're actually decentralizing the grid then. Because then any excess that they generate, they could push into the grid and get paid for it, which is going to make the grid more stable as well. The materials for this build-out are coming from the Rust Belt in the South, regions once hollowed out by globalization. This reindustrialization is not accidental. Federal tax incentives, specifically domestic content requirements, have encouraged companies to source equipment from American manufacturers. But if policy is the carrot, our unique energy position is the engine. By steering procurement toward domestic sources, federal policy has tapped into a decisive competitive advantage: our staggering abundance of natural gas. While much of the world faces shortages, the American interior is practically swimming in fuel. Because natural gas is often a byproduct of oil production, the shale revolution has created a massive surplus. Today, oil companies often flare this gas or pay to have it removed. Now, new pipelines are being planned to transport it directly to the heavy industry hubs of the heartland. Literally our exhaust. We're literally using our own machine farts. I guess they're not technically machine farts. In a certain sense, they're machine farts, in like a Lovecraftian sense. But literally just monetizing our farts. A flatulence-powered economy. That's right, well below average. Tyler says, Premise 1, AI is a tool that will be used in advanced warfare. Premise 2, the greatest technological advancements come within the context of warfare. Conclusion, there is a massive demand for technological advancement in power generation. Bingo. That's it right there. That is it. There is a massive demand for technological advancement in power generation. There is a sort of a prisoner's dilemma of sorts happening at the meta-national scale, or whatever you would call it. And there is an arms race that's happening now, and the way that arms race is being expressed is in industrialization. This energy surplus fuels Roy's redemption.
Patriot, 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 PPPP, patriot.
So true, Roy. So incredibly true. One of the truest things that I've ever heard. Thank you, sir. This energy surplus fuels the very factories producing the steel and cement required for the AI era. These are energy-intensive processes. Cement production alone requires temperatures exceeding 1400 degrees Celsius. Having a cheap local fuel source is a structural advantage no other nation possesses. The evidence of this mobilization is appearing in the dirt. While consumer-related freight remains flat, sonar data shows freight volumes are up roughly 11% this year. This surge is concentrated in industrial modes, flatbeds, and railroads, moving raw materials from the Midwest and South outward. In modern automated manufacturing, energy is the decisive factor. In sectors like steel and plastics, energy can represent up to 38% of total production costs. In this new era, the price of a megawatt is more important than the price of a labor hour. We aren't just reshoring because of policy, we are reshoring because the U.S. heartland is the most efficient place on earth to produce. One more time. We aren't just reshoring because of policy. We are reshoring because the U.S. heartland is the most efficient place on earth to produce. What does capital do? Capital goes where it's treated best. It's like water flowing to the lowest point. The U.S. heartland is the most efficient place on earth to produce. And now, the American military apparatus has decided that it's in their best interests to maximize on the greatest gift that God gave America, the heartland. You see the incentives that are aligning here. Other data points confirm the shift. The ISM manufacturing PMI reached 52.7% in March, signaling expansion. Meanwhile, capital goods now account for a record 41% of all U.S. imports, meaning that the U.S. import profile is shifting away from like consumable consumer goods and toward the goods that actually produce money. So what is going to happen? What is going to happen if the entire economy is pivoting around the productive capacity of the heartland and the import profile is shifting rather significantly in the direction of importing the things that are used to make money? Businesses are no longer just importing sneakers, they're importing the high-value tools required to build this new infrastructure here. For years, the goods economy relied on foreign products arriving at coastal hubs. But as the center of the country begins to export freight again, the gravity is shifting. America is winning this race because we are the only nation that can pair world-leading software with the energy abundance and industrial landmass required to scale it. The hollowing out of American manufacturing was real, but the data now tells a different story. Driven by technology and energy abundance, the economic winds are finally blowing inland. The heartland is producing again, and for the first time in a generation, the center is holding. It's difficult to get to contain all of this in like just a single, you can't put this into a sentence without people's eyes glazing over. But take this phenomenon he's describing here, pair it with the Scott Bessent stuff that we've spent so much time talking about, pair it with the structural incentives around, or the structural changes that are happening around voting infrastructure, with the fraud investigatory platform building up, gaining momentum. Like, I like, how do you capture all of these things and put them into one package? You have all these major foundational structural changes that are taking place, each one of which individually would define a generation, and they're all happening at once, and that's not even all of them. Then you've got the deportations is another thing. And I'm sure anybody in the thoughts aren't immediately popping to my mind, but all of the securing of all these different straits, Venezuela, all the different choke points, locking those down. Like pairing all of these things together, driving major global demand for American oil, scaling up American production, and then restructuring the global monetary system to tilt the field even more toward America. We are moving into just a completely different era, and people are not going to be prepared for it at all because it's going to hit us at fucking warp speed. You've got to be positioning yourself to capitalize on this and take advantage of it now. Because once it starts taking off, elections are going to be like a sideshow. I mean, they're still going to be like heavily focused on and followed, and they're gonna matter. But there are wheels being put into motion now that aren't just gonna pivot on a midterm or something. So yeah, there you go, Wit. Smaller banks buying treasuries so they can loan to middle America. They're expanding the credit capacity while also aligning all of these here to incentivize, to ensure that credit is being directed to the most productive sectors possible. Now, there's the issue with the data centers. Like, I'm sympathetic to it. I see like this sort of thing here. This person posts this and says, imagine a data center here. And, point well taken. But you got to recognize, first of all, that if you think that you're going to stop this, you're trying to, that's very Indian behavior. You're trying to jump in front of a freight train. You're not going to stop this. So you've got to, if you're in your local city council or you're someone who has influence over this in your local area and this is a hot button issue, then like the best that you can do is try to ensure that when it does happen, because it's going to happen, that it happens in the maximally productive and beneficial way that it can for your community. Because it's going to happen. And there's going to be some regions that force it out, that successfully block it, these development projects from happening in their area, and they're going to be left behind economically. And they're not going to be prepared for that because they're like, no, stop it, leave it how it is. You don't see a lot of, no, stop it, do this instead. It's no, stop it, just leave it how it is. But it's inevitable, and the places that do embrace it are going to experience benefits that are difficult to comprehend. This is like going to be driving the cost of energy to effectively zero. While you're also having like a robot surge coming online. And, you know, don't even get me into self-driving and all this other stuff that's going to drastically change the efficiency of the efficiency capacity of our society, which means then it's going to open up the possibility of taking land that is currently not being put to productive use, that's no longer going to be needed, and coming up with creative ways to put it to productive use. I strongly endorse this. Lulu Chang Maservi says, genuinely, if data centers looked like this, the NIMBY angst around them would drop by half. 100%. This is the sort of thing I'm talking about. Give me a data center that looks like that. What do you call it? Like a place where you can come and like take a tour and decide if you want to have like an internship or something there. There are ways that this can be done in really aesthetically pleasing ways that are not that aren't just a fucking eyesore. And also there's thousands and thousands and thousands of acres of total eyesore country that it doesn't matter. Hold on a second here. Homeless Nomad says, give me a data center which recycles its generated heat back into electricity production to offset costs. Yeah. First Citizen linked this. Peter Thiel backs $1 billion ocean data center startup powered by waves. Oh, interesting. Thank you for that. I am going to look into that. Very interesting. Kate says data centers should work with the land and existing structures, not hollow out and destroy existing beauty. I'm confident this will be done down the road. Yeah, for sure. Like, you could imagine once upon a time that, like, in the Industrial Revolution, as all the big industrial plants and stuff were being built out in the American heartland, built on the sides of rivers and stuff, maybe someone would have looked at it and been like, oh, it's an eyesore, just like belching smoke into the sky and everything. And now we look back on that and we're like, oh, look at what a tragedy it is to see how they're total like abandoned rust buckets now. Once upon a time, those were, I'm sure, perceived as eyesores when they were being built. And now we've become completely adapted to them to where we look upon them with affection. That's what's going to happen with data centers eventually, because people are going to start associating massive boosts in their own standard of living as a consequence of the presence of the data centers. Our problems are not going to be the problems of suppression and suffocation and starvation. Our problems are going to be the problems of abundance, the problems of oversupply. We're going to be drowned. It's like the Wall-E world. Like, that's the thing that you need to be defending against. So I've got a whole bunch of, I had to pare this down even from where it was before. I tried to get the best quick hitters. Our great catch-up man in the King Pill Discord periodically gives us an update on all the great economic and reindustrialization stories and data that are going around. And so I went and grabbed a bunch of them from his last couple link dumps in there. And I'm just going to go through them kind of quickly here. But Intel's $13.6 billion in first quarter revenue driven by tremendous AI demand. This is just kind of going with the previous story. The company's x86 CPU franchise, advanced packaging technology, and large manufacturing network position it well to compete in the nearly $1 trillion semiconductor market. Intel's first quarter revenue was up 7% year over year, while gross margin was 39.4%, an increase of 2.5 percentage points from first quarter of 2025. Artificial intelligence is, quote, moving into the real world toward applications like agentic physical AI and robots and edge AI. CEO Lip Bu Tan said on an April 23 earnings call, he said the shift has started to drive strong demand for CPUs, including the company's x86 ecosystem. There was a couple of points down in here. Tan also cited a multi-year collaboration with Google on AI infrastructure. According to a press release, the agreement calls for continued use of Intel Xeon processors in Google Cloud infrastructure across AI, inference, and general-purpose workloads. The deal reinforces the central role of CPUs and infrastructure processing units in modern heterogeneous AI systems. In addition, Tan pointed to Intel's partnership with Elon Musk-owned SpaceX, xAI, and Tesla, announced on X earlier this month. Under the deal, Intel will join Musk's Terafab project to help build custom-designed chips. Now, this itself has major geopolitical implications with China and Taiwan. Essentially, what's happening is a lot of the Taiwan is sort of being deprecated as a global flashpoint because the U.S. is, as fast as they possibly can, onshoring what Taiwan represents. He says, Elon and I share a strong conviction that global semiconductor supply is not keeping up with the rapid acceleration in demand. We're excited to explore innovative ways to refactor silicon process technology, looking for unconventional ways to improve manufacturing efficiency that will eventually lead to a dynamic improvement in the economics of semiconductor manufacturing. And you've got to realize, you can feel how you want politically about these people or these sorts of projects, but they're, I've got a video I'm going to play in just a little bit here from Michael Millerman talking about the new and present friend-enemy distinction that has emerged in among the so-called tech right, and there's this is a freight train. Okay, so there was that one with Intel. Then Siemens, I included this one kind of just because I wanted to say Siemens. Siemens, Diageo, I guess, Oxbow, and others opened U.S. facilities in April. The openings span industries including beverages, metals processing, farming, health and wellness products, passenger rail, and solar. April has seen large manufacturing announcements from AbbVie, L3 Harris, and Texas A&M. Here are 6 other notable openings ranging from Diageo to Suniva in alphabetical order. So Diageo is a beverage manufacturer. They opened a new $415 million, 360,000 square foot manufacturing and warehousing facility in Montgomery, Alabama on April 2021. According to a press release, the facility has a multi-million case annual production capacity that will build greater resiliency and agility into the company's supply chain footprint in North America while making its operations more sustainable. That facility will feature advanced technologies like on-site automated guided vehicles for transporting pallets, high-speed bottling lines with technology that enhances rinsing and inspection capabilities, energy-efficient infrastructure heated by electric boilers for sanitation and bottle filling operations, and advanced water and energy metering technology. It will employ about 100 people full-time and support about 750 one-time construction jobs in the surrounding area. They have invested $750,000 in local universities for workforce development. Metals processor Marubeni Itochu Steel America announced April 23rd that it plans to build an advanced flat-rolled steel processing plant in Osceola, Arkansas. The plant will be valued at $37 million and is expected to bring 35 new jobs to Mississippi County. It will be located adjacent to U.S. Steel's Big River Steel Works and will serve various industries, including automotive, across the south-central United States. Oxbow, which makes specialty harvesting and controlled application equipment, opened a $60.5 million, 200,000 square foot advanced manufacturing facility in Bergen, New York on April 16. The facility designed to manufacture harvesters for specialty crops such as seed corn, sweet corn, green beans, and peas, they said. It will also serve as the company's U.S. headquarters. The site includes a fully integrated laser-based fabrication center, robotic and manual welding, power and liquid finishing systems, and multiple mixed model assembly lines. The new facility also has a large product showroom and an outdoor test track, which can conduct technical training and equipment testing. The facility will employ about 250 people, including up to 78 new jobs. New York is providing up to $2.5 million for the project through the performance-based Excelsior Jobs Tax Credit Program in exchange for the job creation commitments. Premier Brands of America, which makes Arm & Hammer foot care and other health and wellness products, will open a $15 million manufacturing facility in Lackawanna County, the company's first in Pennsylvania. The facility will be built on the site of the former Scranton Times-Tribune printing facility and will create 58 new jobs over the next 3 years. Josh Shapiro said Premier Brands of America received a funding proposal from the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development for a $3.6 million Pennsylvania Industrial Development Authority loan, a grant, and another grant for training workers. Siemens Mobility announced the opening of a $220 million rail manufacturing and services center in Lexington, North Carolina, that will be the first facility in North America to offer both coach and locomotive overhauls when fully operational. According to Siemens, the 200-acre project will create more than 500 local jobs by 2028, while expanding its U.S. production and service footprint. The facility is Siemens Mobility's newest manufacturing location in the U.S. and will help growing demand for passenger rail across the country. It will serve maintenance and overhaul work for bogies, locomotives, and coaches with the potential to support light rail vehicles in the future. The project will use artificial intelligence and other advanced technologies to streamline operations and is supported in part by a $5.6 million job development investment grant from North Carolina. Solar cell manufacturer Suniva announced April 14 that it has entered agreements to bring a 4.5 gigawatt solar cell manufacturing facility to Lawrence, South Carolina, with a projected opening in the second quarter of 2027. That facility, coupled with their existing facility at their headquarters in Atlanta, will bring the company's total domestic solar cell manufacturing capacity to over 5.5 gigawatts annually. It will be the largest of any merchant solar cell manufacturer in the U.S. The 620,000 square foot Lawrence facility will cost more than $350 million and will create more than 550 jobs. Continuing, Anheuser-Busch doubles U.S. manufacturing investment to $600 million. Their initiative includes improvements and workforce commitments at facilities across the country, a $300 million increase in its Brewing Futures initiative, which was launched last year and led to manufacturing improvements at breweries including Los Angeles, St. Louis, and Baldwinsville, New York. The money was deployed in 2025 and will now be expanded for 2026. The Bud Light maker estimates that 99% of its beer sold in the U.S. was manufactured in the country, where it has 9 flagship facilities. The Brewing Futures plan calls for investing in workforce training, advancing technology, and growing its major brands, including Michelob Ultra. They'll also be opening technical skills training centers at its operating facilities across the U.S. and boosting career opportunities for veterans. Continuing, drug maker AbbVie chooses North Carolina for a $1.4 billion manufacturing campus. The 185-acre site will be the company's largest single investment to date, with a focus on small volume parenteral products such as vials and pre-filled syringes. Novartis plans a $23 billion U.S. expansion with a new Morrisville manufacturing facility. Basel-based pharmaceutical company Novartis has announced plans to establish a new manufacturing facility in Morrisville, North Carolina, focused on active pharmaceutical ingredient production for solid dosage tablets, capsules, and RNA therapeutics. The facility is part of the company's broader $23 billion investment commitment in U.S.-based manufacturing, research, and development. The 56,200 square foot facility is designed to strengthen end-to-end production capabilities in the U.S., covering processes from active ingredients to finished medicines. It will also support the development and supply of future therapies, including advanced treatment platforms. This is a part of, during COVID, discovering suddenly that virtually all of our pharmaceuticals come from overseas. Yeah, that's what motivated this sort of move. More, Century Aluminum sees an expansion delivering 10% lift to U.S. output. Century Aluminum Company started producing metal from an expansion at its South Carolina smelter and a rare increase in U.S. aluminum output. The project, which is set to reach full production by the end of June, is expected to lift total U.S. primary aluminum production by about 10%. It's also created more than 125 jobs. The U.S. aluminum industry has declined sharply since the early 2000s, with high energy costs and competition from lower-cost producers overseas forcing smelter closures. That's left the country increasingly reliant on imports, even as aluminum demand grows in sectors like construction, autos, and packaging. The Trump administration has been pushing industry to rebuild domestic supply chains for critical minerals to reduce its dependence on foreign suppliers. Century Aluminum said the expansion in South Carolina would strengthen its position in the U.S. Then Mercedes is investing $4 billion in an Alabama plant to ease the tariff burden with more U.S. production. Mercedes-Benz plans to pump $4 billion into its Alabama factory through 2030, with the bulk of the spending dedicated to localizing production of high-volume U.S. nameplate, the GLC crossover. A new CPA report shows domestic manufacturing market share rebounds in 2025 as tariffs begin to reshape U.S. industry. The Coalition for a Prosperous America has released a new report from its economics team showing that U.S. manufacturers are beginning to gain ground in their own domestic market as targeted trade enforcement policies take effect. The report finds that the CPA Domestic Market Share Index, the DMSI, which measures the share of U.S. demand served by domestic producers, rebounded in 2025 as Section 232 tariffs and other industrial policies began to reshape the competitive landscape for American industry. The gains are particularly visible in sectors with strong remaining domestic capacity that were covered by industry-targeted Section 232 tariffs, including primary metals and motor vehicles, where import penetration had previously displaced significant U.S. production. According to CPA's new DMSI, the share of the U.S. market supplied by domestic producers rose to 65.6% in the third quarter of 2025, up from 62.1% in the first quarter. So, what is that, 3.5%? 3.5% increase in the U.S. market supplied by domestic producers just from the first quarter to the third quarter. The rebound follows a temporary surge in imports in early 2025 as companies rushed to stockpile foreign goods ahead of new tariffs. The report shows that industries covered by Section 232 tariffs led the recovery. Domestic market share in primary metals increased 21% between the first and third quarters of 2025, while motor vehicles and parts increased 4.8%. U.S. primary metals output rose by $3.3 billion during the period, while imports fell by $2.9 billion. Auto production also strengthened, with quarterly output rising $15.3 billion or 8.1%. Domestic manufacturing decline is not inevitable. The data show that production responds to effective targeted policies, said Andrew Reckenberg. These early results suggest that Section 232 tariffs are beginning to work as intended. When policymakers act to correct unfair trade conditions and reduce import distortions, American producers can begin to regain market share and expand output. After years of erosion, some U.S. manufacturing sectors are beginning to recover ground in the domestic market. This one here, another headline says U.S. manufacturing revival may have already arrived. This is from Washington Times. I have one manufacturing client in New Jersey and another in Georgia, both of whom are expanding their businesses. We have large customers who would prefer to buy from us than overseas, my New Jersey client told me. A U.S. manufacturing resurgence is already underway, and policy is accelerating it faster than many expected. In April, the Institute for Supply Management's Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index registered its fastest expansion since August of 2022. 4 of the 6 largest manufacturing industries reported expansion. That is, transportation equipment, computer and electronic products, machinery, and chemical products. Those are rather important industries. The Wall Street Journal's Greg Ip recently reported on the stealth manufacturing boom in the U.S. He cited many examples, including the booming rise in aerospace and transportation equipment. A recently released report from research firm Kearney said, quote, a significant share of executives are reporting plans to reshore or increase production in the United States. The recent report showing U.S. gross domestic product growth at 2% has been largely attributed to corporate capital investment. And when you get a big boom in corporate capital investment, what nearly always follows from that is a big boost in the wage rate and employment. Reuters recently reported that new orders for key U.S. manufactured capital goods increased by the most in nearly 6 years, and shipments rose solidly, suggesting that business spending on equipment helped drive economic growth in the first quarter. A recent survey from the National Association of Manufacturers found that 75.3% of respondents felt either somewhat or very positive about their company's outlook, a 5.4 percentage point increase from last quarter, and above the historical average of 74.3% for the first time since the first quarter of 2023. So, part of the reason why I want to just try to hit all of these as fast as I can, I want to touch on this because you may not necessarily, if you aren't directly in one of these industries, you may not be feeling it yet. If you are, then you probably are feeling it. I've heard from plenty of buddies who are in these sorts of industries that they're definitely noticing it. Some of these things just take time. It takes time for this to heat up, but there's an accelerative process to it. Like the faster that it heats up, the faster it's going to heat up. This one here was from manufacturing.net, said new U.S. tariffs expected after investigations into forced labor and manufacturing disadvantages. When the Supreme Court killed his favorite tariffs in February, President Donald Trump promptly rolled out temporary import taxes to replace them. But those stopgap levies expire in less than 3 months. Now the administration is scrambling to put more durable tariffs in place to keep revenue flowing into the U.S. Treasury and to shore up the president's protectionist wall around the American economy. It's funny that they characterize this as they're scrambling to put more durable tariffs in place when, like, this was their game plan all along. Like, if the Supreme Court knocked it down, then they were going to have to do this. It's just a process that takes a while. But Trump and Bessent have both said that it's actually, once they go through this whole process, then it's actually probably going to increase the revenue that they get from it. Starting this week, the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative will begin hearings in 2 investigations that are expected to lead to a new round of U.S. tariffs, taxes paid by importers in the United States. Trump's newest tariff push is sure to face more challenges in court, but is likely to prove sturdier than the one the Supreme Court tossed out. First up is a hearing Tuesday and Wednesday into whether 60 economies, from Nigeria to Norway, and accounting for 99% of U.S. imports, do enough to prohibit the trade in products created by forced labor. My president is basically a modern-day William Wilberforce. He's ending all of these wars, and he's also ending slavery internationally. For too long, American workers and firms have been forced to compete against foreign producers who may have an artificial cost advantage gained from the scourge of forced labor, U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer said in March. The administration could punish scofflaws with new tariffs. That's right, Slutty Milk. My president is abolishing slavery. Then next week, the administration will hold hearings on whether 16 U.S. trading partners, including China, the European Union, and Japan, are overproducing goods, driving down prices and putting U.S. manufacturers at a disadvantage. The economies being investigated account for 70% of U.S. imports. Again, the probe could result in new tariffs. Most major economies, including China, the EU, and Japan, are on both lists. So the rest of this is just them, people complaining that it's a done deal, that it's just going to happen because it's corruption and they're just poor and being imposed upon. So it says Trump had a handy way to quickly recoup some of the lost revenue, which had been expected to hit $1.6 trillion over the next decade, at least temporarily. Section 122 of the Trade Act of 1974 allows the president to impose global tariffs as high as 15% for up to 150 days. The administration wasted no time. 2 days after the Supreme Court decision, it slapped 10% Section 122 tariffs on imports. Trump said he'd raise the levies to the maximum of 15%, but hasn't. The clock runs out on those tariffs July 24. Congress could extend them, but lawmakers have little enthusiasm for approving what amounts to a big tax as November's midterm elections approach. Section 301 offers another opportunity to replicate the protectionist impact of the IEEPA tariffs. There are no limits on the size of Section 301 tariffs. They expire after 4 years, but can be extended. Perhaps best of all, from the Trump administration's perspective after its Supreme Court defeat, Section 301 tariffs withstood legal challenges when the president used them in his first term to pound China in a dispute over Beijing's sharp-elbowed policies to promote its own tech companies. Any new 301 tariffs are sure to be challenged again in court, but judges might not throw them out. I like how my president was pounding China. Okay, so that was a little bit about tariffs. This here from American Thinker says Trump's reviving U.S. manufacturing just in time for the midterms. Democrats spent years pushing a narrative that manufacturing's decline was inevitable, a so-called Trump effect they blamed on him while their own policies accelerated the bleeding. Trump has ended that lie. Imagine an America where factories hum again, jobs return to towns long left behind, and the heartbeat of industry pulses stronger than it has in years. Under President Donald J. Trump, that vision is becoming a reality. Democrats spent years pushing a narrative that manufacturing's decline was inevitable, a so-called Trump effect they blamed on him while their own policies accelerated the bleeding. Trump has ended that lie. American manufacturing is surging back, and the numbers prove it. Republicans must recognize this triumph, especially now as midterm season unfolds. They should defend it fiercely, for Democrats' woke leftist base would dismantle every gain with vindictive speed if handed power back. Manufacturing is expanding for the third straight month. Its key index posted the highest reading since 2022. New orders are rising for the third consecutive month as both American and overseas buyers seek U.S.-made products. Production has grown for 5 months running and is accelerating at a pace unseen before the disastrous Biden-Harris era. The Philadelphia Fed's manufacturing index surged in April, beating forecasts. These are not abstract figures. They signal factories reopening, machines restarting, and workers clocking in with renewed hope. The first quarter of 2026 delivered the first positive manufacturing job growth in 3 years. The broader economy has now expanded for 17 consecutive months, a sustained run Biden and Harris never achieved. This turnaround did not happen by accident. It stems from Trump's policies that prioritize American workers over cheap foreign labor and unreliable global supply chains. Companies are coming home in the greatest reshoring wave in history. U.S. Steel is restarting its Gary 10 mill in Indiana, creating 225 American jobs. Democrats' ruinous trade approach let cheap imports shutter that mill in 2022. Trump's tariffs brought it back online. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for saving my Hoosier brethren. Apple pledged $600 billion over 4 years to U.S. manufacturing, its largest investment ever, generating 20,000 new jobs and bolstering domestic suppliers. NVIDIA is committing $500 billion to produce AI chips entirely on American soil, with next-generation production already underway in Arizona. These moves mark a decisive break from the vulnerability Democrats cultivated. Johnson & Johnson is investing $55 billion in new U.S. facilities. AstraZeneca is putting in $50 billion, Bristol-Myers Squibb $40 billion, and GSK $30 billion, all to strengthen domestic drug manufacturing and secure life-saving supply chains. Global Foundries is investing $16 billion to bring advanced semiconductor production home, reducing dependence on foreign adversaries for chips that power cars and fighter jets alike. Stellantis is committing $13 billion, its largest single U.S. investment, expanding domestic output by 50% and reopening plants nationwide. Industry leaders speak plainly about the shift. The CEO of U.S. Steel credits dependable domestic supply and fair trade. Steel Dynamics highlights improved markets thanks to onshoring and tariffs. Cleveland Cliffs notes, steel imports have hit their lowest levels since the global financial crisis under Trump's tariffs. NVIDIA CEO has pointed to Trump as America's unmatched advantage. Apple CEO announced the massive investment in new American manufacturing program with clear gratitude for presidential support. Eli Lilly CEO ties its domestic build-out to optimism that will benefit working families and boost U.S. medicine exports. This is not mere recovery, it's a foundational rebuilding of American strength. A self-sufficient industrial economy that exports more than it imports underpins everything from national security to family wages. Republicans should carry this record into November with pride. Democrats' record of making good on shutdown threats, implementing open border policies that turn America into the third world, and relentlessly pursuing regulations that punish domestic producers reveals their true priorities. This was from Dr. Joseph Ford Cotto. Now, manufacturing workers spent about $32 billion training workers. The Manufacturing Institute's workforce survey also found that companies are spending nearly 5 more hours training their existing employees than they did in 2019. I'm not going to read the article. You could go read it if you would like to, but this is the investments are an estimated 22% increase from the affiliate's initial survey conducted in 2019, which reported $26.2 billion. This is a pattern that I've noticed as I peruse these articles whenever Heinz spams the Discord with them, and I've noticed this trend and lots more investment in workforce development, training programs, apprenticeships. There's a recognition, even if it's slow, there is a recognition that this big pivot that's going to happen is going to require, the companies themselves are going to be incentivized to spend on developing good talent. There's actually a downward selection effect now against importing cheap foreign labor, because a lot of the work that needs to be done is going to require more intensive training, which is a higher investment, which means you want to protect that investment. And you don't want it to be on, like Jose who crawled under the wall. What was this one here? Oh yeah, okay. So Skydio commits $3.5 billion to expand U.S. drone manufacturing and supply chain. Skydio has announced plans to invest $3.5 billion in the United States over the next 5 years as it looks to scale domestic manufacturing, accelerate R&D, and reinforce American supply chains for unmanned aerial systems. Here is your new military industrial complex. Here is your Golden Drone project. The investment is expected to create more than 2,000 new jobs within the company, alongside a further 3,000 roles across its wider supply chain. Note that $3.5 billion is not that much money compared to some of the other numbers that we've seen here today, but that investment is expected to create 2,000 new jobs with another 3,000 roles across the wider supply chain. That's a pretty good return on investment there. More than $1 billion of the funding will be directed toward domestic suppliers, underlining a broader push to localize production and reduce reliance on overseas components. Skydio, which describes itself as the largest US-based drone manufacturer, has already established a significant footprint in the global market. The company has shipped over 60,000 drones to more than 3,800 customers, including public safety agencies, all branches of the US military, and allied nations, as well as hundreds of utility and energy firms. A central pillar of the investment is Skyforge, a new initiative aimed at strengthening domestic capability in drone manufacturing. As part of the program, Skydio plans to open a new U.S. production facility 5 times larger than its current space, marking its fifth manufacturing expansion in just 8 years. Adam Bry, co-founder and CEO of Skydio, positioned the investment within a wider narrative of American industrial capability and technological leadership. He said, Skydio has proven that American companies can compete and win in the civilian drone market against products from our adversaries. And on a related note, Anduril teams with commercial space firms and a Sandia lab on a Golden Dome interceptor program. Defense technology firm Anduril Industries said May 5 it has partnered with a group of commercial space companies and a U.S. government research lab to develop space-based missile interceptors for the Golden Dome program. Anduril is one of 12 companies selected by the Space Force to build space-based interceptors, a core element of the Pentagon's planned layered missile defense architecture. The company said its subcontractors include Impulse Space, Inversion Space, K2 Space, Sandia National Laboratories, and Voyager Technologies. And then I wanted to read this part down here. The space-based interceptors are weapons deployed in orbit designed to destroy enemy missiles during the boost phase, the earliest stage of flight. Golden Dome is intended to counter advanced threats such as hypersonic weapons and large-scale missile attacks that could overwhelm traditional ground and sea-based defenses. By operating from space, interceptors could respond within seconds of launch, potentially neutralizing missiles before they leave adversary airspace or deploy countermeasures. The Space Force selected 12 companies, including Anduril, to develop early-stage interceptor capabilities as part of the program. Michael Getling, who leads Golden Dome, has said the goal is to demonstrate an initial layered missile defense capability by the summer of 2028. And I'll just say that I've had some conversations with some very interesting people recently about the absolute madhouse that is the space industrial complex right now. And the majority of it is driven, we're talking like the Gundo guys, the majority of it is driven by a lot of small, agile companies like this that are hyper-specializing in a thing and scaling up really, really quickly. A lot of automated production. There is tons and tons of money being poured into this. Now, speaking of space, I'm going to play this Michael Millerman video here, but talking about the Schmittian component that has emerged among the tech right. But as a setup for that, I want to just talk about this story real quick. So in 2022, the FCC, under the Biden administration, revoked Starlink's $885 million award under the, what was it called? It was called the, rural, it was RDOF. It was Rural Development something fun. Basically, they're the big agenda for getting rural internet development done. That was a massive boondoggle. The FCC revoked Starlink's $885 million award to provide internet to millions of Americans, saying it wouldn't hit 100. I don't know how you say this. 100 over 20 megabits per second for 40% of locations by 2025. Today, Ookla officially confirmed that in the fourth quarter of 2025, Starlink exceeded that, reaching 44.7%. Starlink users are now able to get median download speeds exceeding 100 megabits per second in every state but Alaska. And The FCC literally made up a new rule in 2022 to deny Starlink the $885 million award. They canceled it because Starlink's current, at the time in 2022, real-world speeds weren't already hitting the full benchmark 3 years before the actual deployment deadlines. Starlink was the only one affected because most other companies didn't have any service in those rural areas to speed test. I wonder where that $885 million went. Starlink was the only company that was actually attempting to do it. They arbitrarily revoked it because they didn't hit the benchmark 3 years ahead of the deadline for the benchmark. So where did that $885 go? The only other company that lost its grants was LTD Broadband. Their cancellation had nothing to do with speed tests. The FCC just didn't trust they could pay off their debt or scale from just 15,000 customers to hundreds of thousands. Also, it looks like other RDOF winners won't reach their deadlines. A group called the Coalition of RDOF Winners has been begging the FCC for extra money or an amnesty window so they can walk away without penalties. This was reported by Ars Technica. The whole story is another clear example of the Biden administration giving the green light to go after Elon and his companies. So think about that. Think about being Starlink. Not even Elon himself, but just anybody working with Starlink who's associated with this project. You get an $885 million award, and then it just gets arbitrarily canceled. You're the only one attempting to make this happen, and this is placed within the context of just constant open persecution by the Biden administration and the Democrat Party at large. That is really important. Like, if you're trying to evaluate the psychology, the decision making of these sorts of people, the sort of things that they would be motivated by or committed to, this is very, very important context to have. So within that, I'm going to give my voice a break for a few minutes here as we listen to this interesting observation from one of my favorite Canadians, Michael Millerman.
In this video, I'd like to explain a brief thesis to you. And I think we see abundant evidence for what I'm about to say pretty much everywhere we look, especially if we are alert to it. But it wasn't self-evident not so long ago. Now, this basic thesis is that you have had since the end of history, since the end of that period beginning in the 1990s, early 1990s, where it was assumed that the United States had won for all time, in some sense, the ideological and military battle in geopolitics, that now it was an American century, unipolar world. You know, the end of that view with the reestablishment of China and Russia and Iran and new poles of threat, new vectors of attack. For example, you know now that we're in the middle of an AI race. And that view, okay, so the view that from the 1990s until, well, it depends where you draw the line. Peter Thiel seems to have drawn it in 2001 after the September 11th attacks. Other people drew it at other times. For somebody, it took Russia and Ukraine in 2014. And for somebody else, it took some other key moment. But what is it that switched? What is it that snapped? It's the return of the political, the return of the friend-enemy distinction. And together with the return of the political, with the view that, wait a minute, we're not just building some kind of entertainment software for a global marketplace, but in addition, and more importantly, we're building national defense, national security, and products and services, companies and programs that are primarily designed to benefit the West, America and the West. So it's a kind of fight for Western civilization that's taking place in the sphere of venture capital and entrepreneurship. And I would say, again, I don't think I'm saying anything too groundbreaking by observing the fact that take Palantir, a company, major, massive, big, growing company that reported earnings yesterday. That's Monday, May 4th. They crushed their earnings. They're growing very fast. And we've discussed Palantir on this channel before. You know, there's the book, The Technological Republic, but there's also just the open and full-throated defense of Western civilization, of the West, of America and its allies. And Alex Karp said on the earning call that whenever there's an option to serve a commercial customer or the federal government in its national security component, meaning actually the fighters, the soldiers, the men and women, on the front lines, Palantir will always side with the warriors because it's somehow at the heart of its operation. Now, this is not something that was widespread for a very long time, as I say. It only comes together with the repoliticization of the world and therefore also of the global economy and also of the entrepreneurial space. That's why we're in a moment of re-industrialization. I think there's a re-industrialization conference coming up, for example, in Detroit, if I'm not mistaken, in a month or two. That's why you have not just Palantir, but Anduril, and a great book came out recently called The Anduril Thesis, which develops this view and, in fact, refers to the end of history idea quite early on. So we're in a period where the political has come back, friends and enemies have come back. You can look at Mark Andreessen's Tech Optimist Manifesto, and you'll see there's a section there on the enemy. So friends and enemies are back on the table. The political has been reconstituted, and all kinds of things follow as a consequence. I would say that this new Silicon Valley, broadly speaking, because not all of the key players, like Palmer Luckey recently said, he's nowhere near Silicon Valley, but the point is that these young tech entrepreneurs who are fast and innovative and who are past the end of history moment and who are also not the slow bureaucratic incumbents. Again, Anduril and Palantir, two very top of mind examples here. It is their moment, and they're aware that they are fighting on a civilizational front.
Now, this observation right here is exactly what I was realizing when I had the whole PayPal mafia moment a couple of years ago. As I was listening to all of these guys in this culture, it's like Silicon Valley, tech right, PayPal mafia, whatever you want to refer to it as, that particular culture of guys who are really kind of like 90s libertarians, but they're subscribers to the California ideology. That's like a particular brand of libertarian that is, California has a pretty good history of like frontier mentality, going out and just kind of like going off into the place that's not been explored or not being touched, and like innovating in there. And it comes with it kind of a like fuck your cultures, fuck your traditions, fuck your rules, whatever. Surfer mentality, kind of. We're gonna go vibe. And for some of us, vibing means building legendary technologies. So I was observing what they were talking about and the points that they were chafing at under the Biden administration in particular, and the way that the Democrat Party was beginning to pivot or focus on attacking and constraining the broader tech world, really beginning to pick winners and losers very much, and it was very agitating to them. And they're living in this world where you have the entrepreneurial startup, like we're just grinding 100-hour weeks, writing code or doing whatever the thing is you're doing, and then you get bogged down by some bureaucratic paperwork thing or some regulatory thing hurdles you've got to jump through. And these are the guys who, like I called them the grillionaires, like the billionaires who, for them, just grilling means moving fast and breaking things. They really don't want to be restrained and held down. And in that sense, they retain a lot of that go west young man sort of frontier spirit that is very characteristic of America and Americans. Even if, like, in their actual politics, they're products of California in the 80s and 90s. And so when I started seeing like the Gundo thing that was happening, I realized that the thing that these guys hate is managerialism. They detest the entire thing of having to deal with managers. And this is like, you have a political party that has built itself upon bureaucratizing and managing literally everything down to the nth degree, coming up against this force of productivity defined by guys who distinctly do not want to be managed, that already have a libertarian kind of rebellious streak to them, very technocratically minded. They're not going to want to be bogged down by DMV appointments. That's exactly the sort of thing they're going to want to automate away. You also have the big like self-improvement culture in California among the tech entrepreneur scene. There's a big overlap with then you get into life extension and all that sort of thing. But like, this is a particular type of person. And what he's identifying here is that they have become politically activated like in their DNA. This is not just like, oh, I've got kind of like a political axe to grind or something, but like, no, we're in an existential fight now. The Schmittian line has become very, very present to them, and in some cases, openly. There's lots of, this is where Yarvin has had a pretty big impact. There's lots of, he's the thing that like onboarded a lot of that world into, you know, the edgier parts of political theory. We got about halfway through this video. Then I got a whole bunch more stuff after this. I got to run down and help Amy real quick. We're going to talk about stablecoins and Iran and game theory and this sort of stuff here in a little bit. And then we'll talk about the deportations. And so I got to run down and help Amy. She just got the raw milk order. So I'm going to give you guys just a little bit of a... oh, you guys are going to get something interesting. Give you guys just a little bit of EWBSX and bear with me. This is a good opportunity for you to contribute to the tip goal. Tip Amy for her great work going and picking up this milk for free. So tips.kingpill.com. I'll be back in at 10 minutes or so.
I believe in the word of God. Don't you know that I believe, 'cause he made me believe. I believe in the word of God. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I believe, 'cause he made me believe.
This fool who loves you doesn't want to let you go. And there goes my heart breaking in two. There go my eyes crying over you. My arms don't want for us to part. So when you go, here come the blues. There goes my heart. So when you go, here come the blues. There goes my heart. So when you go, here come the blues. There goes my heart.
Your leftist ass like corn on the cob. I'm ready. I will eat your ass. Your leftist ass like corn on the cob. I'm ready. I will eat you. I will eat your ass. My children aren't going hungry. I'll do it. I'll drink your blood. And I'm starting to think about having to eat my neighbors. You think I like sizing up? I'm gonna haul him up back chain. Chop his ass up, size it up. I'm gonna haul him up back chain. Chop, 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 chop. I will eat your leftist ass like corn on the cob. I'm ready. I will eat your ass. I will eat your leftist ass like corn on the cob. I'm ready. I will eat you. I will eat your ass. I'll barbecue your ass flat. I will cook your ass up so fast, and I'll tell him, "Oh, I killed a cow out back, baby." You think Christ would eat somebody? He would never do that. I will. I'm ready to hang them up, gut them and skin them and chop them up. You know what? I'm ready. I will eat your leftist ass like corn on the cob. I'm ready. I will eat your ass. I will eat your leftist ass like corn on the cob. I'm ready. I will eat you. I will eat your ass. I will eat your leftist ass like corn on the cob. I'm ready. I will eat your ass. I will eat your leftist ass like corn on the cob. I'm ready. I will eat you. I will eat your ass. And that's why I want the globalists to know. I will eat your ass first. I swear to God, if it's the last thing I do, I'm gonna get my hands around your throat.
Oh, all right. Thank you for giving me that little intermission. I heard the Mavericks playing when I came back, and just remembered that Mavericks were that was a road trip album that I used to listen to with my family when we would go on road trips. And I remember going to Virginia City and seeing, this is when I was probably like 6 maybe, and seeing where Bonanza was filmed, and just driving through like Western Nevada, listening to the Mavericks, brought back memories. Their lead singer just died recently, so memory eternal to him. I am in the doghouse. Apparently, Amy was trying to get a hold of me. She was posting in the chat that because she'd gone to get the milk, and I'd said, let me know when you get back, and I'll just take a quick. I'll step out real quick and help you unload it. She got, I don't know, how many gallons did you have this week? Probably like, she usually has anywhere between like 40 and 60 gallons, plus like cheese and sometimes beef and yogurt and all kinds of stuff. So I'd said, let me know when you got here, and I was sitting here watching Telegram, and she was in the chat, and I wasn't paying attention to the chat because I was focusing on reading. Yeah, first the freezer and now the milk. I am in the doghouse. There's a very good way to get me out of the doghouse if you guys could help a nigga out here. Tips.kingpill.com. That's a good way to gets you on Amy's good side, and it'll get me back on her good side as well. 53 gallons. And she's not feeling well either. She woke up with feeling under the weather. She had a croaky voice this morning, and she has to deal with Eastwood. So, living distance. Couldn't hear the Foyd bell. That's right. Yeah, I couldn't hear my Foyd bell. All right, back to Mr. Millerman.
So I like to think of these groups, both on the funding side and on the building side, as the new civilizationalists. Now, it wasn't too long ago that you had to be outside of the West to be thinking in terms of civilizations. That it was mostly, post-colonial or decolonial or postmodern or leftist projects of various kinds that said, look, according to the West-centric viewpoint, which confuses itself for all of humanity, there's only civilization. There's savagery, barbarism, and civilization. There's not civilizations in the plural. There's just civilization as a state that you reach or attain.
This is a very interesting point here that he's making, that historically it's been, you don't have like the West civilization and then the other civilizations. You just have the West, and the West is equivalent to civilization. The idea that something non-West would also be civilization is actually a line of thought that's more recently historically been associated with left-wing thought.
State of civility, a state of being like the West. But they would turn their postmodern criticisms against that view and say, no, there are in fact civilizations. But that was coming, as I say, from outside of the West or from the internal enemies of the West, so to speak. But that has changed, and now you have West-centric, pro-Western voices invoking a rhetoric of civilizationalism, of civilization.
Save Matt from the nigger house. Wait, maybe I heard it wrong.
Thank you, Nematoder. Yes, please. Please save me from the nigger house. Oh, by the way, I also almost forgot to mention it. A very happy birthday to Gaga. I don't know if she's listening right now, but today is Gaga's birthday. She's 29. So congratulations to Gaga. Happy birthday and many years to Gaga.
Of the inequality and plurality, or even multipolarity of civilizations. And that's playing out. As I say, I think it's quite interesting. For those of you who are in the markets primarily, you should know that there's a theoretical component to this. For those of you who are in the theory side, you should know that there's a clear path to the companies, the investments, and the thesis, like the Anderil thesis in part, right, that are extremely important now to American national security, not to mention to manufacturing and to investing. Palantir has a lot of retail investors. Anderil, not yet public, but you can imagine that there will be many when that moment comes too. So this is the situation. The new civilizationalists, you have that in the builders, you have that in the funders, and you have that in the thinkers. And that tells you that studying the issue of civilizational cycles or of interpretations of civilization, of the register of civilizations, how many are there? How do we understand the relationship, the balance? Is it always going to be conflict? Where can it be cooperation? And all of that, the whole world of civilizational dynamics, it's inherently interesting and practically applicable now on the investment front. So that's the main thing that I wanted to tell you. And all of the theorists who thought through and who helped us to understand the return of the political, like Carl Schmitt, for example, they have now become relevant not only for an analysis of global politics, but also for an analysis of global markets. And they can even help you to develop profitable investment ideas that are in the service of a political commitment. For example, a commitment to the continued existence and thriving of the West.
What he's saying there, in Millerman speak, what he's saying is, you can put your money where your mouth is. Listen, my Schmittian chuds. The civilizationalists are getting Schmittian. And there are opportunities here where the market incentives are aligning with the political incentives. And there are people who are thinking in Schmittian terms, and explicitly even in some cases, and you can put your money where your mouth is, literally and metaphorically. Okay, now, talked about LNG earlier. Corpus Christi port hit record first quarter volumes on LNG growth. This was driven by a surge in LNG shipments as new export capacity ramps up along the Gulf Coast. The Port of Corpus Christi reported its strongest first quarter performance on record, driven by a sharp increase in LNG shipments, liquefied natural gas. As new export capacity continues to ramp up along the Gulf Coast, customers moved 54.5 million tons of commodities through the Corpus Christi ship channel in the first quarter of 2026, surpassing the previous quarterly high of 54 million tons set in late 2024, and marking a 6.1% increase from the same period last year. The growth was led by LNG volumes, which rose by 1.5 million tons, a 33% increase year over year, supported by commissioning activity at Cheniere Energy's Corpus Christi Stage 3 project, blah, 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 blah. Additional gains came from agriculture exports, refined products, and other bulk liquids, each contributing higher volumes compared with the prior year. Dry bulk shipments also increased, driven by higher imports of iron ore, barite, and cement. Those increases were partially offset by a decline in crude oil shipments, which fell 5% year over year during the quarter, though exports rebounded later in the period amid shifting market conditions. It's interesting that crude oil shipments were declining up until the Iran war. March volumes reached a record 19.9 million tons, up more than 10% from a year earlier, with increases across key commodities, including crude oil, refined products, and LNG. Crude oil exports exceeded 2.4 million barrels per day during the month, among the highest levels recorded for the port. Port CEO Kent Britton said the increase reflects strong operational performance and the ability of exporters to respond to changing global market conditions. Port of Corpus Christi is one of the largest U.S. energy export hubs, handling crude oil, LNG, and refined product shipments. It's a global market. So, Peter St. Onge here has some commentary on. We're getting a Peter St. Onge video today and tomorrow. Almost had two today, but haven't tuned into our one of our great balds in a little while. But he says OPEC is breaking up. Fracking turned OPEC's money printer into a straitjacket, with America drinking their milkshake. A full breakup could drop gasoline prices below $2 a gallon.
OPEC just lost its third biggest producer, the United Arab Emirates, better known as Dubai. Did America's drill baby drill end the most destructive cartel in history? After 58 years in OPEC, the United Arab Emirates last week suddenly announced it is leaving. The reason is they've been fighting for years to produce more oil, but the Saudi-dominated OPEC has said no. That left a third of UAE's capacity idle, leaving $30 to $40 billion on the table every year, about $250,000 per citizen household, basically telling a Ferrari to drive 25. So the background is OPEC, like any cartel, chokes output to keep prices high. This hurts customers. Everybody who drives or heats their house has to pay more, but it helps producers who get higher prices at the expense of selling fewer barrels, which has always caused friction in OPEC. The problem is that trade-off worked until America and Russia turned into oil superpowers, with Canada and even Brazil not far behind. To illustrate, the 1970s, OPEC was almost 90% of global oil exports. Today, after we fracked, OPEC is down to just over half. So half is still a big deal. The Hormuz is in the news, but it is not 90%. And it dramatically worsens the price for output trade-off for OPEC members when Americans and Russians are drinking their milkshakes. So who wins, who loses? For the moment, not much changes. The Strait of Hormuz is driving oil prices. But once the war is over, according to analyst Procurability, global oil prices could drop $5 to $10 on UAE alone, which is about 50 cents a gallon at the pump. It's great for countries that import a lot of oil, like Europe, Japan, and China. It's mixed for countries that are basically self-sufficient, like the US. And of course, it is terrible for countries that export a lot of oil, especially Saudi Arabia and Russia. The wider question is, will other OPEC members follow Dubai out the door? Does the entire cartel break up? Because if that happens, it could drop oil prices closer to $20 compared to pre-war. You'd be looking at $40 to $45. You'd also be looking at a paradise of $2 gasoline. That would mean roughly $500 billion transferred from producers to consumers, which alone would also grow the entire world economy, since oil and gas go into almost everything: factories, trucking, plastics, chemicals, cement, steel, fertilizer. Now, this is all catastrophic for Saudi or Russia, who might lose $100 billion between them. Be a gift from heaven for Europe and Asia. Together, they gain hundreds of billions worth of cheap oil. It's almost as good for the U.S., since we are still a net importer of oil, like Canada and Venezuela, but we've got a very big economy to benefit from cheaper oil. So cheap oil grows manufacturing, grows logistics, when America's got a lot more of that than it has oil fields. Put it together, and America might get about $100 billion of benefit, which is $1,000 per household per year. So what's next? Brought to you by the Bitcoin Way. Breaking OPEC would be the biggest transfer of wealth since the Marshall Plan, and it's mostly from the bad guys to the good guys. Whatever the war is doing on the ground, it has lit a fuse on key globalist institutions. Trump and NATO are this close to a street fight. Trump's musing about ditching the UN.
Hail victory!
They don't understand the things I say on Twitter.
Waiter, more fascism, please.
Waiter, more fascism, please.
So true. Thank you, Hail Victory. The $88 tip. You are a patriot. Also a reminder that there is still the $29 tip is still out there. I haven't seen anyone hit it in a little while. $29 gets you Eastwood's voice. There's that one. I've got some more that I need to get put in there here soon. But there's $14.88. There's 47. There's 88. There's over 100. There's over 200. I feel like there's another one that I'm missing. I don't remember. Let me finish this last 14 seconds real quick.
Japan and Korea are ponying up for their defense. China has to actually pay for oil, and now OPEC could finally collapse. Follow for daily videos. Okay, we'll be watching. See you next time.
Now, I suspect the mention of Saudi Arabia there. I know that the Gulf states have started getting really into data centers, and I wonder if that's one. Basically, the Saudis are being induced into changing the structure of their own economy to accommodate this. But the 14 seconds, straight buster. Yes, well played, sir. What was I gonna say? Oh, just the whole picture just makes too much sense. Like, they're setting this up. They're structuring everything here to run it hot, to just maximally, like, pedal to the metal, run it as hot as possible, and goose manufacturing as much as possible. To me, it seems as if the nails are already in the coffin of OPEC. I can't imagine that this isn't something that they're directly driving toward. I guess we'll see. James E. Thorne says, for the record, Iran's historic mistake. Karl von Clausewitz wrote that war is the continuation of politics by other means. President Trump grasped this from the start. Operation Epic Fury exists to stop Iran's nuclear march and restore deterrence, not to pursue the familiar neocon fantasy of occupation and nation building. Epic Fury is peace through strength and action. Credible force applied decisively when adversaries mistake restraint for weakness. By weaponizing the Strait of Hormuz, Iran committed a strategic blunder of historic proportions. Tehran meant to punish America. Instead, it exposed every power built on imported energy, vulnerable sea lanes, and the delusion that globalization repealed geography. China is exposed. Europe is exposed. Britain is exposed. Iran has created a world where hard resource power decides outcomes. Now, I will say that I think narratively there's a lot of accuracy here to this. I just think that Iran, or at least powers within Iran, are much more on board with this than not, because Iran themselves have a lot of hard resource power. So they would probably be just fine, transitioning into a world where hard resource power decides outcomes. That, they would benefit from that. Start with China. Beijing's industrial machine depends on imported oil and gas moving through vulnerable maritime choke points, the old Malacca dilemma in modern form. A great power reliant on long exposed sea lines cannot be secure, regardless of economic scale. The Hormuz shock forced China to scramble for alternatives, proving that size is not resilience. Europe and Britain face the same problem. After escaping Russian dependency, they traded one vulnerability for another, leaning on imported LNG and maritime flows exposed to coercion. When choke points tighten, they absorb shocks rather than project strength. European criticism says less about American failure than about discomfort with a world where hard power still matters. Iran's mistake is that once Hormuz becomes structurally unreliable, the world builds around it. That means bypass corridors, revived pipeline politics, and urgent planning for routes linking Aqaba to Mediterranean outlets near Gaza, and the long-stalled Basra to Aqaba pipeline. The old energy order is cracking. The UAE's OPEC exit signals cartel discipline giving way to national advantage under pressure. Trump deserves credit, not European scolding. Operation Epic Fury struck thousands of targets, degraded Iran's offensive capabilities, and shattered assumptions that the West would absorb escalation without response. The administration acted while others lectured. It restored deterrence in the only language Tehran understands. The larger lesson matters more. Secure natural resource hard power is what the Western Hemisphere possesses in abundance. The United States, Canada, and the Americas command hydrocarbons, LNG, farmland, fresh water, critical minerals, and strategic depth on a scale import-dependent Europe and Asia cannot match. This crisis clarified, not weakened, the Americas' structural position. The financial dimension reinforces the point. Demand for Federal Reserve swap lines during crisis proves king dollar remains supreme. When stress hits, governments run toward dollar liquidity, not away from it. Hard resource power and monetary power reinforce one another, and the United States sits at the center of both. This is why I titled the show today, Never Bet Against America. That sentence right there. Hard resource power and monetary power reinforce one another, and the United States sits at the center of both. That is epic theory's real significance. Clausewitz wrote that the political view is the object, war is the means. Trump understood that. Iran tried to weaponize geography. Trump turned the confrontation into a demonstration of who is exposed and who is not. My president is pantsing Persians and you're blackpilling? The Trump administration deserves far more praise than it has received, and history will likely judge that Iran's greatest miscalculation was not merely closing Hormuz, but revealing which powers still command the real sources of strength. There's a little map there if you want to look at the different oil pipelines and strategic choke points. Now, this here, shout out to, I believe it was Sauce in the King Pill Discord yesterday, who I don't think I've squared away. I know that Sauce is a regular in the chat and is also in the Discord, but I don't remember who is who. My my imaginary internet friends blur together sometimes. Anyways, he's the one who posted this here in the Discord yesterday. Here is Adam Curry, the Podfather, giving a really great explanation of stablecoins, which is something we've talked about a lot recently, and I'm going to keep bringing it up because, it's a BFD. It's a BFD, okay?
Promised. Now we get stable coins. This is a crazy thing that's happened. There's this. So a stable coin is a digital dollar. It's pegged to the dollar, so it's always a dollar. And you can pay with this through the internet, through apps and everything. It's already being used all over the world. The only reason it's worth $1 is because the stablecoin company that creates it, they have debt and paper to back it up. So they buy America's debt. They get treasury bonds or T-bills, which actually pays a dividend, so you get interest on that. And for each dollar they have bought in treasuries, they can create a stablecoin. So if you look at the company Tether, they have bought more of the United States debt than most countries. They have $160 billion worth of U.S. debt, and for each of those dollars, they've created a stablecoin, which now people can use all over the world transacting. Wow.
And where is Tether now headquartered? Chat. Do we have any ball knowers in the chat? Where is Tether now headquartered? We talked about it here on the show when it was relocated.
And what's their business? There's like 50 people in the company. So they have $160 billion at 4% interest annually. They're making bank just for holding this debt. So I think President Trump is very smart, and he's seen that we can flood the world with our stable coin, and you kind of get a 2-for-1.
So think about that, like the structure of Tether. That's right, Donkey Bite, El Salvador. It is now, Tether is headquartered in El Salvador. So the business model for Tether is pretty freaking brilliant. They've got minimal employees, but they're basically just being paid to just buy U.S. debt and hold it. And then they also are they're heavily invested in Bitcoin and gold as well. So they're effectively kind of like a new sort of bank. They just buy U.S. debt, and then for all the debt that they buy, they can issue stable coins, and it's tied. There was someone who made this point yesterday. I can't remember who it was. I think it was Cheeky commented on the he's a Replay Gang guy yesterday, and he brought up how the fact that getting the stable coins this deeply integrated, especially through Tether, getting it this deeply integrated into the US dollar system, and then Tether also having such substantial stakes in Bitcoin and gold, means that you're actually making a much more secure currency, which is going to create a much more stable financial system overall.
This debt. So I think President Trump is very smart, and he's seen that we can flood the world with our stable coin, and you kind of get a 2-for-1. So you create $1 of debt, but then you create another dollar on top that can be used all over the world as the reserve currency, and that should probably result in, I don't know, the Mar-a-Lago Accord or some new monetary system that we're going to have to come up with to really have our dollar be valued properly, but also still remain the reserve currency and remain the strong export country that we need to be. Because what do? We don't make anything that we sell abroad. We can't all be, serving each other burgers and fries and washing each other's cars and cleaning each other's homes. We have to build something, and all of that went overseas. Everything we got, all of the stuff on this table. This, it didn't come out of his butt. This is from China. Although I don't know. So there's something big coming, really big, and it has to happen. And Trump is a very meta guy. People misunderstand. He's going to refi the country. That's what he's a real estate guy. He's going to figure out a way to refi it, and it'll be digital. And a lot of the Bitcoiners don't like this because they like
And that's it in a sentence. When I heard him say this, I was like, that's exactly what Trump's doing. Trump's a fucking real estate guy. He's refinancing the country. That's the whole thing in one sentence. He is refinancing the United States empire.
Bitcoin to be the money that the whole world uses. That may one day happen, but now it's more like the digital gold. You can keep your value in it, and I can send $1 billion if I had it. I could send $1 billion to another country, to another person in 10 minutes, and no one can stop me. So it's a very useful tool, but it hasn't quite turned out to be money or currency the way it was originally intended. But it's going to be a very important part of it. I think you'll see Bitcoin be a part of that strategic reserve. It's easier than sending gold, than, I'm going to ship you $1 billion worth of gold. I need, armored cars, I need dudes, everything, security and ships and whatever. So it'll be a part of it, and you'll still be able to use it between people. But it looks to me like stablecoin, Tether in particular, is going to be the future of the U.S. dollar payments. And this is where a lot of people on the right, certainly, are very afraid of control grid, because a stable coin is not necessarily like Bitcoin. You can stop it, you can control it, you can see who sent what to whom. There's a lot of fear about this, and particularly, although I don't see any maliciousness, there's fear that Elon and the PayPal mafia and Peter Thiel, all guys you've met, all guys you've had
PayPal
on the
mafia
show, I think
mentioned.
are actually quite nice people, that they're going to bring in the new with AI, and we're all going to be locked in, and Stargate will bring cancer mRNA vaccines that'll be mandated. I mean, people are spinning up over this stuff. And I'm not saying that they're necessarily wrong or there should be no concern, but we are moving towards a digital dollar, and it will have aspects of control, which is why I like the backup of Bitcoin, so I can still transact and do things without anybody being able to stop it. And you're going to get none of that with a shitcoin. Nothing.
So what he did not really touch on as much on this here is the effect on the offshore dollar. So here's 10 Delta. I read a few of his tweets yesterday. He's got another good one. The Eurodollar system, the offshore dollar deposits held by non-U.S. banks. If you've heard Eurodollar and you're kind of like, I don't totally understand what that is, it's just Eurodollars are offshore dollar deposits held by non-U.S. banks. It's estimated it has historically been the largest pool of dollar liquidity in the world, meaning there are more and more liquid dollars offshore than there are onshore, even though they're exchangeable one to one. This capital pool, it's estimated to be around $14 to $18 trillion. That's for the Eurodollar system itself, is estimated to be around $14 to $18 trillion. And then there's the entire derivatives market that's built on top of that, which is quadrillions. I think 4 quadrillion or some number that doesn't even exist. This capital pool was completely outside the Treasury demand chain. A Eurodollar deposit at HSBC London, or insert your preferred foreign bank, was a claim on HSBC and not on the US government. HSBC could effectively choose its own asset allocation. Enter stablecoins. Stablecoins re-anchor offshore dollar holdings to U.S. sovereign debt directly. So you no longer have the middleman. You can anchor offshore dollar holdings directly to U.S. sovereign debt. A USDT in a Hong Kong investor's wallet is, mechanically, courtesy of the Genius Act, now a claim on the U.S. Treasury via Tether's reserve. This is a digitized re-onshoring of the Eurodollar system, in which every offshore dollar held in stablecoin form now translates into U.S. Treasury demand. Some perspective. If even 25% of the Eurodollar pool migrates to stablecoin form by 2035, that translates to somewhere between $3.5 and $4.5 trillion of new structural Treasury demand. You talking dollar milkshake? Structural treasury demand, sufficient on its own to absorb roughly 2 years of net treasury issuance at current pace. And so all net treasury issuance for 2 years. And that would be if it's just hits 25% of the total pool over the next 10 years, basically. Stablecoins will recycle the offshore dollar and, in the process, help solve the U.S. fiscal situation. Hyper-digital dollar maximalism. And I know it's been a long show thus far, coming up on 2.5 hours, but take all the stuff I was talking about the re-industrialization effects, and tie that with this. These are both massive, massive, structurally transformative things that are happening simultaneously. And they feed each other. So did I get multiple clips of Rubio here today? Yeah, I did. Okay, so first clip from Rubio. Rubio's filling in. He's got yet another job, filling in for Caroline Leavitt, and did swimmingly, absolutely swimmingly. But some interesting commentary here regarding Iran and the UN. So we've talked about NATO, we've talked about OPEC. Now the UN is getting some pressure on them.
And I think it's a real test for the UN, right? As something that functions that can solve global problems. What is the purpose of the UN? The UN was supposed to be a place where you could peacefully resolve global conflict. Right now you have a country who is unlawfully, criminally, and illegally taking possession of an international waterway and blowing up commercial vessels and putting mines in the water. I don't know if people appreciate how outrageous this is, how unacceptable it is that any country would fire and try to sink commercial vessels or put mines in the water. Both of these things are illegal. And so we're going to take it to the UN, and we're going to give it another chance to be a forum in which we're not even asking people to commit troops to the region and help blow up the Iranian boats. All we're asking them to do is to condemn it, to call on Iran to stop blowing ships, to remove these mines, and to allow humanitarian relief to come through, because there's humanitarian aid that's trapped. That's it. This is a very modest request. And if you're telling me that the international community and hundreds of countries cannot rally behind that, then I don't know what the utility of the UN system is, if it can't even solve something as straightforward as that.
He's such a fantastic communicator. And leave aside all the euphemisms that are in there and see what's happening here. They have cornered the UN, put them in a position, the UN has been caterwauling for months about how they're going bankrupt, how they're not going to even be able to function anymore. And now he's like, we're not even going to ask you to commit anything, literally make a token diplomatic gesture. What's that? You can't? You can't even bring yourself to make a token diplomatic gesture that doesn't cost you anything? You're revealing how pointless you are, why you don't even need to exist anymore. Fugitive Trucer said, so the Iran war is now ending the UN, breaking up OPEC, and pulling America out of NATO. Trump is using this as an excuse to restructure the entire post-World War II order. People are missing the big picture on this. America is shedding the chains of managerial foreign policy. I don't care if this is their intent. I don't care if this is mapped out on a big whiteboard somewhere. This is the pressure campaign that is emerging, that is present. These are the structural wheels that are being set in motion. It is now an inevitability that OPEC is going to break up, that the UN is going to dissolve, and that the United States is going to leave NATO. Now, you may have the sign on the door might still be the same, but there's going to be a foundational restructuring of each of these that is functionally equivalent to the United States leaving NATO. I think what's going to happen is that that NATO is going to become a tool that the United States uses to buck break the other NATO members. They're going to be begging to be let out of NATO. No. You're stuck in here with us now. This is going to be a massive leverage, a massive lever that's used to jam you into the position you need to be in. Someone in the chat up here said about the Trust Plan Star says this will also turn a lot of countries into actual vassal states rather than the fake vassals that have been living off of the U.S. taxpayer. That's regarding the stablecoin thing. That's a very good point. This is what you're seeing. You're seeing like the emergence of a digital empire, essentially, where it's like much more openly a transparent relationship. You guys are just strictly subject to the whims of the United States, and that's something that can be sustainable if it's conducted basically beneficently. This is where you can actually get the beneficent dictator. They keep saying structural, but like the structural incentives are moving into place. They're beginning to align whereby something like that could become a reality. That doesn't mean for sure that it's going to. People still have choices to make. Humans do act, but that incentive structure is coming into alignment. The North American Trump Organization. Oh God, please call it that. The good cunts have arrived. Aussie spotted. Living Dead says they're just doing things and letting the scenarios unfold naturally, which would normally just be accommodated and smoothed over for the Euros and other bad allies. But more, they're doing nothing and letting it shine the reality of power balances and the actual pressure that has been alleviated by the U.S. Yes, it's revelatory, apocalyptic, one might say. Now, Lulu Chang Baservi here says, in the era of all writing converging on pretty good with the help of AI, there is huge alpha and extemporaneous oratory. Let me say that again. I butchered the sentence. In the era of all writing converging on pretty good with the help of AI, there is huge alpha in extemporaneous oratory. Being able to speak off the cuff powerfully and persuasively can't be faked, and there's no replacement for it. So this is a clip that lots of people have been oohing and awing about from Rubio. And I'm going to play it. It's definitely... It definitely reads a lot like kind of standard BoomerCon, a boilerplate stuff. And I've got to say, like, I'm not all the way there with Rubio yet. I still don't fully trust him. I told someone in the Discord the other day that I'm like 88% of the way there. I mean, I'm getting there. Like, it's kind of picking up a little bit of steam, but I still am just. He's saying and doing a lot of the right stuff, but I can't deny the fact that the mere fact that this statement is going viral and lots of people are oohing and awing about it is itself significant. So this is what he said.
Back row, yellow tie. Back row,
Secretary,
yeah.
With CBN News, you've had a deep faith for God and country. At the end of the day, with all that you've been involved in,
keep going.
You've been extremely busy.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
As we all know. I got to ask you, what is your hope for America at a time such as this?
My hope for America?
And how do you personally
been.
deal with that?
Yeah, look, I mean, my hope for America is what it's always been. I think it's the hope I hope we all share. We want it to continue to be the place where anyone from anywhere can achieve anything, where you're not limited by the circumstances of your birth, by the color of your skin, by your ethnicity, but frankly, it's a place where you are able to overcome challenges and achieve your full potential. I think that should be the goal of every country in the world, frankly, but I think in the U.S., we're not perfect. Our history is not one of perfection, but it's still better than anybody else's history, and ours is a story of perpetual improvement. Each generation has left the next generation of Americans freer, more prosperous, safer, and that is our goal as well. But it is a unique and exceptional country, and as we come upon this 250-year anniversary, I think we have a lot to learn and be proud of in our history. It is one of perpetual and continuous improvement, where each generation has done its part to bring us closer to fulfilling the vision that the founders of this country had upon its founding. So, thank you. All right. I have time for 2 more questions. All right, right there in the pink. No.
You fucking lunatics. Kate says, yeah, the DR bros were not happy with this statement here at all and are dooming out about it. And I gotta say, like, I can understand why. This is definitely, I'm kind of like what's the Vietnam vet dog gif where he's like wide-eyed and he's got the helicopters and everything. Like, I get that when I hear this rhetoric. But see, here's the thing. if I was to make the case for why this is not something worth lighting up the plastic bags in your bathtub over, it would be that this is rhetoric, and this is, frankly, if you're not Donald Trump, like, Donald Trump is uniquely capable of bluntly saying things that other people just can't quite get away with. And the DR, the dissident right psychological profile desperately wants to be pandered to. They're very paranoid. So they don't really have an appreciation for rhetoric. When you're talking about someone at the height of someone like Marco Rubio that needs to be able to speak, this is presuming he's essentially setting himself up as a potential presidential candidate, which I think is definitely on the table. And right now, I'm not going to take a position between him and JD Vance. I mean, I'm definitely much more inclined toward JD Vance, but stuff's like out of my hands. I'm just going to watch the show here, and I have the side I'm rooting for. But there's plenty of reasons. I'm not going to, knock on wood, I'm not going to say some of these out loud, but there's plenty of reasons why it's probably good to have a large stable of potential candidates. So he's speaking within that context, like he's speaking to all Americans, and so he's giving you like the standard boilerplate, like nation of immigrants and whatever, and he says we've got our history isn't perfect, but he says it's better than anyone else's, and he's casting forth this vision of America being the nation that's constantly shooting up. We're not settling for something. We're constantly shooting up. Is it true that over the past couple of generations, each generation has successfully set up the next generation for success? No, it's not true. That's actually conspicuously not true. But not every statement needs to say everything. Here, they're asked, like, what's your vision of America? What is your hope for America? Well, my hope for America is that this is what we are. This is what we've been characterized by, but we've fallen short of that, and my hope is that it continues to be that way. This is something that will play extraordinarily well to the general public. And something that the DR guys are just, I think, like temperamentally incapable of understanding is the utility of rhetorically speaking to the middle and governing to the right. Speaking to the right actually hinders your ability to govern to the right. This is just a feature of politics, and it's not going away. So just because you want to be pandered to, just because you want to be given the comforting assurances that you're not going to be betrayed yet again, that's nice that you want that. Go like submit it in your order request. Hey, this is what I'd like to see. Maybe someone will deliver it to you. Leave it on your front porch. Yeah, Straight Buster, you have to play the game. So I'm like I said up front, I'm not bought in on Marco Rubio. But if I'm going to make the Steelman case for it, that's what he's saying. He's been on the record more than enough, I think, over the last 18 months, saying lots of based things. Oh, they're not saying based things. We're going to tune out. No, you don't. That's not how the game works. You don't know how to play the game. If you want your politicians to just say base things to you, you don't know how to play the game. You're amateurs. You belong on the sidelines. We don't need more people on the sidelines. We need more people in the game. It's time to play the game. We'll talk more about that sort of thing tomorrow. But speaking of playing the game, Malmsbury Man says, the left has played this game, manipulating procedure to achieve their desired outcomes for as long as I can remember. It's so encouraging to see the Trump admin using the same tactics. It won't please the instant gratification crowd, but it's more effective and harder to stop. What is he talking about? Well, Prowler here, one of our great immigration posting patriots, says Senator Dick Durbin wrote an op-ed this morning detailing how President Trump is dismantling DACA, the Obama amnesty. Durbin says there were 530 active DACA in 2024, down by 30,000. He misspelled, he wrote 2 and he meant to write by. Down by 30,000 by late 2025, as USCIS is doing real vetting, slowing approval, and leaving these illegals open for removal. There's some quotes from it. Yes, Trump is deporting dreamers. Now here's the quiet part. Processing holds, delayed renewals, much of the attack on DACA is hiding in plain sight. In 2010, Senator Richard Lugar, a Republican from Indiana, and I wrote to President Barack Obama asking him to stop the deportation of undocumented people who were brought to the United States as children. A Republican said, please stop deporting undocumented people. 2 years later, Obama responded by announcing the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. Since then, DACA has allowed more than 830,000 dreamers to come forward and contribute more fully to their country. Then came President Donald Trump. Yeah, let me say that again. Then came President Donald Trump.
I am your voice.
While Trump claimed he wanted to take care of DACA recipients, wait. You're telling me that Trump said something rhetorically toward the middle? He's going to take care of them, all right.
We're going to kill them. You know, they're going to be like dead.
While Trump claimed he wanted to take care of DACA recipients, his first administration sought to end the program, leading to legal battles that reached all the way to the Supreme Court. In his second term, Trump has again ramped up his attacks on immigrant communities, including DACA recipients. Trump has again ramped up his attacks on immigrant communities. Then, on April 2024, the Justice Department's Board of Immigration Appeals, which has been politicized by the Trump administration, as opposed to before when it wasn't, issued a controversial decision holding that a DACA authorization is not a basis for stopping removal proceedings. On April 24, Trump's Justice Department issued a decision holding that a DACA authorization is not a basis for stopping removal proceedings. This decision means DACA recipients could be issued deportation orders. As of September of 2024, roughly 537,000 people had active DACA status. By September 2025, that number had dropped by 32,000. DHS has not published updated data on how many individuals have been arrested and deported after their DACA authorization expired. And it would be best if they just don't. No, we don't need that data. Don't like constantly demand all of this. Let this stuff happen. Just let it happen. Manipulating procedural outcomes to deport illegals. Now, also from Prowler here, the GOP is pushing more funding for ICE and Border Patrol on top of the big beautiful bill in a little beautiful bill to pay for personnel, hiring, tech, and agency expansion. $70 billion on top of the $170 billion from 2025 to keep deportation and detention climbing. So this is part of the whole government shutdown. What they ended up doing is they split out the funding portion of the DHS. So the DHS funding was held up. They split off the funding portion of it, and they're going to do it through reconciliation because then they can do it with just a simple majority and a tie-breaking vote from J.D. Vance. The Democrats were holding it up because they were demanding things like body cameras and increased like constraints on the deportation efforts. So they ended up splitting it up into two bills. And this bill is going to be passed through reconciliation. Here's what's in it. $38.2 billion for ICE, $26 billion for offices under CBP, which includes $3.5 billion for border security, technology, and screening, $5 billion extra for DHS, $1.5 billion for the Justice Department, and $1 billion for the Secret Service. This is for the purposes of security adjustments and upgrades related to Trump's ballroom project, according to the Judiciary Committee text. Senate Republicans are using the party line reconciliation process to overcome a Democratic filibuster of ICE and CBP funding. This $70 billion would fund ICE and Border Patrol through 2029, meaning they would get that $170 billion that's also through 2029, and they'd get an additional $70 billion. Massive, massive funding already secured and yet to come to continue scaling things up. Now, within that context here, White House border czar Tom Homan told a room filled with DHS officials and industry personnel that mass deportations are coming. You ain't seen shit yet, he said. Hulk Homan, they're calling him. HH. White House border czar Tom Homan on Tuesday brushed off critics within President Donald Trump's base who say the administration is not deporting enough people, while vowing to, quote, flood the zone with immigration officers in jurisdictions which passed legislation limiting cooperation with federal enforcement. Speaking at the Border Security Expo in Phoenix, a room filled with Department of Homeland Security officials and industry personnel, a defiant Homan vowed that the mass deportation promise will happen. For the people out there saying President Trump's getting weak on mass deportation, you don't know what the hell you're talking about, Homan said, referring to such naysayers as keyboard warriors. Homan said he spoke with Homeland Security Secretary Markwayne Mullin earlier in the morning to discuss what the administration will do in the next couple of months. You ain't seen shit yet, Homan said. This year will be a good year. Mass deportations are coming. Homan's comments at the Phoenix Expo, a typically friendly room where administration officials tend to be slightly more unguarded in their remarks than they are at other public appearances or during press conferences, come as DHS seeks to take a more targeted and low-key approach with its agenda and operations under Mullin than it had under former Secretary Kristi Noem, amid public polling showing Americans souring at the administration's aggressive crackdown. Noem's tenure at DHS saw nearly daily controversies as immigration officers carried out highly public and often unfocused operations in cities like Chicago, Minneapolis, and Los Angeles. These operations drew frequent protests from citizens, including 2 Americans who were shot and killed while opposing the actions of immigration officers who had been deployed in Minneapolis. Following the second killing of an American citizen, VA nurse Alex Ugly, by immigration officers, Trump deployed Homan to Minneapolis to replace Gregory Bovino, the Border Patrol official who had overseen the deployment and turned down the temperature. CNN reported in March that the administration has sought other ways to soften the public messaging surrounding its immigration operations. James Blair, the White House Deputy Chief of Staff, told Republicans to focus on the removal of criminals rather than mass deportations, a source familiar with this discussion told CNN. This is given James Blair's role, he's helping a lot with the midterms. So this is, I'm sure the statement is said in the context of messaging. Based on polling and whatever, as you're talking about it, focus on the removal of criminals rather than mass deportations. Homan on Tuesday said criminal and public safety threats, quote, have to be the priority. But he added that the prioritization of criminals does not mean everybody else is off the table. Why is that, Homan said? I don't care how long you've been here. If you're here illegally, entered this country illegally, you cheated. You cheated the system. Conceding that 35 to 40% of the undocumented immigrants who have been arrested during Trump's second term have no criminal record, Homan said that was necessary to send a message to the whole world. So the way this is being talked about is that Homan is saying, oh yeah, we're toning things down and we're focusing just on the criminals. But if you actually read the article, he says, I don't care how long you've been here. If you're here illegally, you cheated. You're going to go home. And 35 to 40% of the immigrants who have been arrested have no criminal record. He vowed to send masses of immigration officers to states that enact legislation limiting cooperation between state and local police and federal immigration authorities. Quote, we're going to flood the zone. You're going to see more ICE agents than you've ever seen before. When that happens, Homan said, so-called collaterals, people who weren't targets of immigration officers but happen to be in the area when an operation takes place, are coming too. Quote, you will see collateral arrests increase in these areas. You see more agents in your neighborhoods because you forced us in this position. So what is this article telling us? This article is telling us that Tom Homan's position is, the border czar, his position is, I don't care how long you've been here. If you got here illegally, you're going. And over a third of the people that they've arrested so far are not criminals in this like strict sense. And also, he's saying not just the targets of immigration are going to be, or targets of immigration authorities are going to be arrested, but collaterals are going to be arrested as well. Democratic Governor Kathy Hochul of New York, one of the states that had drawn Trump administration criticism for its immigration policies, reacted sharply Tuesday to Homan's comments. All I'll say to Mr. Homan is that Donald Trump himself said he would not send a surge of ICE agents to the state of New York unless I ask. I'm not asking, she said. Homan vowed to be focused on this mission until his dying breath, regardless of whether he continues to hold a position within the administration or what is said about him. Quote, I simply don't care what people think about me. I never have and never will. The man is committing himself to this cause to his dying breath. And a bunch of guys with podcasts and Twitter accounts are calling into question his patriot credentials. I won't have it. You will not question the patriot credentials of the great Hulk Homan. So again, like the only thing that could drive you, like if you really care about the immigration issue, I have no tolerance for you not understanding. Like if you can't rattle off numbers to me, like Slutty Milk is constantly updating us on the partnership programs that ICE has with the with police departments. He just posted it in here. We're at 1,786 287G agreements as of yesterday. If you really, really care about the immigration issue, if you really care about mass deportations, you better have a regularly up-to-date Rolodex in your head of what the status is of everything. If you're just firing off like the same headline talking points, you don't actually care about this. It's just really easy to be anti-Trump. It's like the default position for the mainstream is to be anti-Trump. It's the easiest thing in American politics to be anti-Trump. And you finally found your excuse to relent and be anti-Trump, and you just get to pretend that you're more based. You're anti-Trump because you're more based than he is. No, you're just acquiescing to the mainstream sentiment and pressure because you're ultimately, you just want status. This is your route to status that you found. It's the easiest thing in the world, attacking Donald Trump. This is a situation where it's really valuable to speak to the middle and govern to the right. Because yeah, lots of people want all the illegals removed from their country. This is extraordinarily popular. They don't want to see it. They want to have their cake and eat it too. They want it to happen out of their view. You're demanding it be presented to you because you're neurotic and paranoid. So you're demanding that they compromise themselves electorally just to make your feelings better. While you don't actually care to even drill down into the details to see what's actually happening, you just repeat whatever your gay-ass podcast host told you to say. We're currently seeing approximately 1,946 illegal aliens get forcibly deported per day, around 710,290 per year, and that number continues to increase. This is from the Morse Report. President Trump's mass deportation machine continues to pick up speed. National ICE-involved arrests have skyrocketed up to 1,121 per day. The Trump administration's build-out of the 287G program has seen illegal alien custodial transfers from local law enforcement to ICE surge up to 550 per day. CBP border apprehensions are currently averaging about 275 per day. In total, we're currently seeing approximately 1,946 illegal aliens forcibly deported per day, which is a rate of 710,290 per year, and that number is continuing to increase. This graph here on the right, this is the increase in 287G agreements under the second Trump administration. The red here is the task force model. This is like the full meal deal. Then you have the warrant service officer and you have the jail enforcement model as the dark band here at the very top. Notice that the increase is being driven largely by the increase in the task force model. What this is essentially doing is deputizing local police and sheriff's departments to serve as deportation officers, which is ideally the way that this goes. That they're the ones who do the enforcement so that ICE can go do targeted enforcement raids in specific places. When generally, it's local law enforcement agencies who are doing the majority of the immigration enforcement operations and then just turning them over to ICE to be actually processed and deported. Now, if you look at these numbers and you think, and you're like doing the math and you like struggle with object permanence and you can't like scale up numbers and that sort of thing. If this is a difficult thing for you, I've got context for you on these numbers here in just a moment, but I got a couple others I want to hit before I get to that. First, this one from America First Insight. Forbes released an article suggesting that roughly for every one ICE arrest, 6 illegals dropped out of the labor force. So we're looking for proxies here. What are the effects of this? For every one person arrested by ICE, 6 illegals disappeared from the labor force. While not one-to-one self-deportation, if you dropped out of the labor force, cannot get welfare thanks to One Big Beautiful Bill Act reforms, and you cannot possibly live in America for that long with zero income. This study would suggest the possibility of 2 to 4 million self-deportations is more on the likely side. So a lot of this stuff, you can't get hard and fast numbers for these things. You kind of have to triangulate and look for proxies for them. So if every one ICE arrest yields 6 illegals dropped out of the labor force, and they're being cut off from welfare across a bunch of different vectors, then their only other option is to leave. They're gonna leave one way or the other. So here is this this math that I did the other day. We're going to kind of work through some of it. I got the process started, and we're going to work through it a little bit. So our own nation here screenshots this goober. Ben D. Donato says, yes, that's why Trump is such a betrayal. He should have booted at least 10 million by now. But instead, he only makes a token effort and keeps the legal floodgates open. Like, it's just literally not even true. This isn't someone who's gone and tried to ascertain what reality is. This is just someone who listens to some podcasts or follows some people on Twitter who lie to him, and he just repeats the lies. Also, we could easily purge 100 million in a single year if we were willing to be ruthless. Now, if this was just like some random anonymous dude on X saying this, I would just laugh at him. But there are serious people who post with their actual faces who have repeated this sort of thing over and over again. We could easily remove 100 million people from the country in a single year. I don't even know where to begin. To like, how logistically illiterate are you? Like, just don't even talk about like illegals. Just merely say, okay, we're going to spin up a logistical exercise where we move 100 million people from one country to another. Just do this like for funsies. What's that going to require? You're talking like getting people to volunteer for it. Start running through these numbers, like the number of people required to facilitate this. We're going to go on a vacation. People are going to sign up for this. They're going to volunteer for it. Think about all the personnel that would be required, all the logistics equipment that would be required just to simply move 100 million people who volunteer for something from one continent to another. You can't even comprehend how many people 100 million people is. Your brain literally cannot wrap itself around that. Our own nation says Trump didn't betray you because he couldn't deport 10 million in 1 year. No one likely could. ICE had 1,800 field agents before the big beautiful bill passed July 4th. 1,800 field agents. ICE had only 35 contracts with local law enforcement. They now have, it's actually 1,786 because the number keeps going up every day. Now, so 1,800 field agents. 1,800 field agents, 35 contracts with local law enforcement. And that less than 2,000 people is responsible for deporting 10 million people. Now, 25% of the FBI is working on immigration. JAG courts are efficiently handling cases, and over 100 other former immigration judges were fired and replaced. There are dozens of lawyers solving this problem, and people online both don't know and don't care. Also, the United States could not get rid of 100 million people in 1 year. It's not possible, even if they were attempting a genocide, which isn't what we are talking about. You might struggle to if you decided your policy is that we're just going to pick people at random and kill 100 million people this year, that would probably be logistically difficult to pull off. Kaiser von Lohengram said it's incredible that a rudimentary understanding of logistics and how the bureaucratic machine of the United States works is so rare in the right-wing commentariat. So I decided let's look at some of the mathing here. Yeah, 6 million is hard enough. Yeah, you gotta love a group of guys who have who spent the last decade describing the logistical problem of 6 million people, and now they're like, oh, just get rid of 10 million in a year. So I asked Grok, what was the total staffing of immigration enforcement personnel at DHS as of January 2025? So this is before the One Big Beautiful Bill. It gives me the breakdown. There's a number of different positions. You've got your workforce. Some of these are people who are involved in actual enforcement and removals. Some of these are support and investigations. Yeah, you got logistics. You got all sorts of different people. It says a rough total for dedicated immigration enforcement personnel, with this as officers and agents primarily doing border and interior enforcement, was likely in the range of 30 to 40,000 total, heavily weighted towards CBP's border roles and ICE's interior enforcement, out of DHS's overall about 260,000 workforce. This excludes broader support staff for non-enforcement duties. DHS overall grew modestly in 2025, driven by immigration priorities. Now, I said, how many are there now? So we're looking at approximately, let's say generously, 40,000 people. Where are they now? How many are there now? It said with the new hiring and stuff, it's likely in the vicinity of 50,000 plus. This is total deportation personnel. I said, how many other federal personnel have been redirected toward immigration enforcement, including IRS, FBI, etc.? It says, as of the most recent detailed public data, from August to September 2025 disclosures analyzed by the Cato Institute and referenced in reporting into May of 2026, roughly 20,000 federal employees from outside ICE itself were detailed or had duties shifted to support ICE's immigration enforcement operations. This includes both other DHS components and non-DHS agencies. Focusing strictly on non-DHS agencies, for example, DOJ components like FBI, ATF, DEA, IRS, State Department, the redirected personnel totaled several thousand to low tens of thousands at peak, primarily law enforcement officers and agents authorized to assist with arrests, investigations, detentions, removals, or support tasks. On 1 August 2025, ICE disclosure showed 28,390 federal law enforcement officers diverted across all sources in a single period. There are often temporary details or partial duty shifts rather than permanent reassignments. There's no public aggregation of everything, but it breaks it down here. You've got FBI, you got IRS, you got ATF, you got DEA, U.S. Marshals, State Department, other DOJ and Bureau of Prisons. It says likely 8,000 to 15,000, heavily weighted toward DOJ and law enforcement during the peak reallocation period on top of internal DHS shifts. So I said, okay, on average, approximately how many total personnel are required to enforce deportation of a single person? We're talking about logistics here. So one single person, how many people lay hands on that one person on average to identify them, locate them, arrest them, secure them, transport them, secure them in some other facility, transport them again, court cases, adjudications, transported again, moved out of it, like all that whole process. How many people are going to touch one person? I said include all investigative, apprehension, adjudication, and logistics personnel. I'm trying to construct an estimate of what the total deportation enforcement capacity existed when Trump took office, what maximum possible daily deportations would have been, and what it is now, assuming there were 100 million illegals who needed to be deported, so I can determine what the daily necessary deportation rate would be to reach that goal within Trump's term. So we're saying we're going to remove 100 million people over 4 years, 25 million people a year. What would be the daily necessary deportation rate, and what would be the required personnel to effectuate that? So it says there's no single official or universally agreed upon. It says many removals now use streamlined processes that skip lengthy court steps, while others require investigative work, arrest, detention, hearings, travel documents, and transport. A practical way to estimate the average total personnel support ratio, including investigative and apprehension by ICE ERO plus diverted agents, adjudication via EOIR immigration judges and staff, and logistics like detention and transport, is to look at total relevant federal personnel actively supporting removals divided by annual deportations achieved. So you can already see why this number is not going to be exactly correct, but we're trying to get a ballpark here. This gives the effective full-time equivalent effort per deportation. So roughly 0.08 to 0.11 total personnel years per deportation. Or equivalently, the system performs about 9 to 12 deportations per supporting personnel per year. So like, for example, you might have a bus. So you'd have one person driving the bus that has, 30 people in it or something like that. So some of these you can have, there's going to be a single personnel who is moving multiple. And then other cases, you're going to have, like, if you go arrest a person, you're probably going to take, I don't know, three or four guys minimum per person that you're arresting. Depends on what the environment is. So if you have like one person to arrest, you're probably going to go out with a team of maybe like a half a dozen or something to deal with, people, family members or other people show up and try to obstruct or whatever. You got some guy who puts up a big fight and you need multiple people to subdue him, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this comes from peak 2025 diversion data. This would be 33,000 to 42,000 total federal personnel assisting ERO at times, including 6,100 core ICE ERO officers, plus thousands from FBI, DEA, ATF, IRS, state, CBP, USCIS, etc., alongside the fiscal year 2025 ICE removals of about 442,000. So it says this is an average across the entire pipeline, not that 0.1 people are assigned full-time, blah, 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 shared workload. DHS, here's another interesting point here. DHS puts the average enforced deportation at about $17,000 to $18,000. So each deportation costs approximately $18,000. Let's say, easy math, let's just say $20,000 per deportation. So let's start with that. Let's do this math here real quick. So we're going to say $20,000 per deportation. And we'll say 25 million. So we need to deport 25 million people per year. And it is $20,000, 5 to the 11th. So 5 followed by 11 zeros. That's, is that $500 billion? Is that 500 billion? Too many zeros. My eyes are glazing over. 100,000, million, billion. Yeah. So $500 billion. Just strictly for deportations alone. Deportations alone would require $500 billion. So let's see here now. It says, when Trump took office, core ICE enforcement or ERO personnel, yada, yada, yada. It's giving me all the details. Let's get to the end here. So hypothetical, 100 million deportations in one 4-year term. Trump's term is approximately 1,461 days. To deport 100 million people, you would need approximately 68,500 daily deportations. Every day, 68,500 people would need to be deported. At the January 2025 capacity, that would take about 250 to 330 years. At current capacity, it would take 135 to 230 years. Even scaling personnel 5 to 10x, ignoring all other limits, would still fall far short. Real-world factors like detention, logistics, and international cooperation make the hypothetical scale impossible under current or near-future resources. These are order of magnitude estimates based on public data and analyses. So think about this. So 68,500. Let's break this down this way. 68,500 would need to be sent out per day, divided by 50 states. That means you would need to have 1,300 people deported from each state each day. That means that you would need to have the investigative personnel to go identify who those people are, of like accounting, looking through public benefits data, whatever, like however you assess, you come up with all these people. You have to go identify them. And like clearly there's lots and lots of noise in all of this data. It's almost impossible to identify who all of these people actually are. Then you need to go find them. Like once you have identified who they are, you need to locate where they are. Then you have to send a team of people to go extract them. Then you have to bring them and hold them somewhere. Then they have to be, you have to have judges who adjudicate on them, rule on their case. Now maybe you can bulk this. You got a bunch of people, you all jam them together and you do like a bulk, process a bunch of them at one time. Even still, what you're looking at is you need 1,300 being deported per day, per state. Right now, we have somewhere in the vicinity of, what was the number? It said probably about 50,000 personnel, federal personnel, after redirecting a bunch of people from other agencies. I think it's a lot of the imagery of taking IRS agents and redirecting them to immigration enforcement is just chef's kiss. But if you got about 50,000 people, that means you have about 1,000 people per state dedicated to deportations. And you need to deport 1,300 per day. So those 1,000 people have to be responsible for 1,300 deportations per day. This is like, there's no conceivable... You realize that the entire U.S. economy would have to be ordered around the deportation industry to attain that level of scale. It's preposterous. I'm not saying that those people shouldn't be deported. I'm not saying you just accept it. I'm saying fucking buckle up, Buttercup. We're going to be doing this for decades. This isn't something that's going to be finger snap and solved. It's literally not possible. And if you aren't personally committing yourself to it, contributing your body to the cause, I don't want to fucking hear it. There's a major manpower issue that requires extraordinary lifts of bureaucracy and funding and logistics and scaling up all these operations. You're talking about creating an entire industry effectively from scratch. They need as many bodies as they can possibly get. So at this point, if you aren't yourself rearranging your entire life to order it around contributing to the deportation process as much as possible, I don't believe you that you think that the country's not going to exist if we don't get 100 million deportations in a fucking year. You're full of shit. Mirchuk says, imagine it like this. If New York City got completely demolished, total rubble under the Biden admin, and the demand was that Trump had to rebuild it exactly as it was before Biden immediately, or else you're going to vote Democrat. Yeah, I mean, that's really akin to what you're talking about. You're talking about a project that's on the scale of like rebuilding New York City. Yes, it's possible. Yes, it's going to take a long fucking time. And one of the most important things is if you're going to make this happen, you need to get funding for years ahead of time. You need to ensure that you've got a succession plan lined up so that you can keep this going across multiple administrations. And then, what was the other thing I was going to say? You also need to shut down the inflow. But you have to do all of this without cratering the labor market. Because if you go too hard on this too quickly, you're removing bodies, which is going to make numbers go down, which is going to make people panic and freak out. Because people look at numbers on headlines and they freak out over that, even if they're not actually experiencing that effect on their lives today. If you're talking in orders of like quarter by quarter, straight up removing tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people from the economy is going to show up in labor numbers. It's going to show up in GDP numbers, which are numbers that are still going to be used to make major decisions. These things have to be balanced. This is what governing is. Governing is not campaigning. Campaigning is not posting. We'll get into more of that tomorrow. There's a whole bunch of these disgruntled, resentful, dissonant right types who have convinced themselves that posting and governing are the same thing. And they don't have what it takes to actually govern. They have a self-defeating political theory. So we'll get more into that tomorrow. I've got to get this. I've been awake for way too long. I'm exhausted, and I got to make sure I hopefully don't delay the show too much tomorrow morning. So I'm going to wrap this up now with a a nice, encouraging long post from the great patriot John Conrad. He said, stopped at a small auto parts store yesterday. Thank you, Emperor Atreides. For the last few years, they had migrant workers behind the counter. Nice guys, competent at pulling parts from the warehouse and would go out of their way to help you loading heavy stuff like batteries into your car. But ask a question and you got a blank look. ICE cleared them out. The store hired stoners. The place became a dump and I started driving an hour to AutoZone whenever I needed something. Yesterday, I just needed a battery. As I pulled up, I noticed the parking lot was unusually full. Inside, they had a young American kid right out of high school. I had to load my own battery, but this kid was a whiz. He flew through the inventory, explaining the lead-acid surface area in each option and why it mattered. I stuck around while he helped another customer diagnose a carburetor problem. I learned more in 5 minutes than I would have spending 2 hours on YouTube. Then he started figuring out which replacement air filter the customer needed using basic geometry. I don't know how much additional revenue this kid brought into the store, but it has to be substantial. And he wasn't alone. They had an older black gentleman working with him who, I'm told, had run a warehouse for a large repair shop or something in New York City before he got laid off. Slow, but methodical and oozed competence. The store recruited him out of retirement, brought him up to our rural area part-time to organize inventory, fix the shelves, and scout local talent. I felt like I was watching a dynamic duo at work. Then nostalgia hit me hard. This is what it was like going to an auto parts store with my dad in the late 80s and early 90s. Everything well organized, people who knew cars cold. To be honest, the guys back then weren't exactly nice, at least not in New York. They roasted you, but they helped. And it wasn't just auto parts stores back then. Plumbing stores, boating stores, stereo shops. I remember going into Manhattan as a kid to a block of nautical shops, stores that sold charts and sextants. I wonder if they had any astrolabes there. Where a retired ship captain like I am now explained to me how a chronometer works. I want that job. The nation is healing, but we still have a long way to go. So true. So incredibly true. Wit says this post made my day. We got to get these little white pills in every day. All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Astrolabe. Make sure you go follow t.me/kingpilled if you want alerts to know when I'm going to go live. Follow the Telegram channel. I won't spam you, I promise. Go join the Kingpill Discord, kingpill.com. We will have a voice chat on Friday night. And please do contribute to the Erickson cause. Tip your streamer at tips.kingpill.com or Kingpilled on Cash App and Venmo. Kingpilled on Buy Me a Coffee. Lots of ways you can support the show. Go watch John Q. We got some John tent. That's right. I'm going to go consume some John tent before I go to sleep. And I will catch you guys tomorrow for another episode of the Astrolabe. Until then, I leave you with Hulk.
When they took a shot at my hero, and they tried to kill the next president of the United States, enough was enough. And I said, let Trumpomania run wild, brother. Let Trumpomania rule again. Let Trumpomania make